Morning.
Morning.
There's an addition of subdivision 2021-0-042, Bovis, and apologize for this. There was a technical issue with our iCompass system. We all approved the report, but it didn't get into the agenda package. So Hillary and Steve will give a verbal report on that one. There's also one item add to closed session, and that is discussion of fire agreement with the town of Nobleford.
And what did you say the number of the subdivision was? That's number 3?
Yeah,
Is it?
sorry. 2021-0-042, Bovis.
And that's number 3?
Yeah.
Anything else? We have a motion to, don't everybody jump up at once. Can we have a motion? Thank you. As amended. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of the council meeting of April 15th. Any errors or omissions? Are there any errors or omissions of the minutes? Go ahead, Klaus.
I'll move the minutes of April 15th council meeting.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Can I,
Okay, we have a delegation appointment at 9. Yep. And?
just to remind everybody to use their mics, because we're having problems. We're webcasting, and with our masks, it's really hard to hear. So if you can just use your mics and speak into them, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a link pathway project update, and I know we have Henry Doeve online and George from SMRD board, and I'm not sure about the third gentleman there.
Mr. Brent, sorry, I think is Galash, is representing Vista Meadow subdivision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
but Larry's gonna.
And Larry, if you would like to open things up, please.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that projecting or not really? Can we hear? Yeah, it's going okay? Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, council, everyone present virtually and physically. I'm here today to just present a bit of an overview on the Link Pathway project and a bit of an update as to where the project stands as of today. So the Link Pathway project that is proposed to run through Lethbridge County from the town of Coaldale to the city of Lethbridge is progressing. There's actually no recommendation from administration to council today. Of course, council has the prerogative of making any motions they wish, but we're not seeking any particular direction necessarily today and don't have any specific recommendations for council. To give everyone a bit of context and reminder or refresher on what has happened in the not too distant past, back in September of 2020, Council passed a lengthy resolution with respect to the Link Pathway. And I'll just summarize that because I think it really kind of frames up what needs to be done in order for the Link Pathway project to really move forward and perhaps eventually get constructed. So the resolution that was adopted back in September was that Lethbridge County supports in principle the creation of a regional pathway through the municipality that would link the town of Coaldale with the city of Lethbridge. However, in order to minimize risk to the county, several conditions must first be met by the Link Pathway Society before council will give its final approval. Therefore, be it resolved, and there are 6 items here, and I'll just list them all. These were the conditions that Lethbridge County Council set. The first one is that written agreements from all landowners, including the St. Mary River Irrigation District, granting permission for the pathway to run through their property must be completed. To date, we don't have that in writing. We know that the SMRID has been very involved, and I think it's probably safe to say we have their approval in principle, but I and administration here at the county, we don't have anything specifically in writing before us at this time. So that was the first condition that council established. The second one was that written confirmation from the city of Lethbridge that they are committed to constructing the pathway that will connect the city pathway network must be provided. We do have a letter of support received, signed by City of Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman, indicating their support for the project and up to $200,000 in kind for works to ensure that it connects to the east side of the city. The third condition that council established in that resolution that was passed back in September was that all roadway crossings must be engineered and constructed to the satisfaction of the county before the pathway is open for public use. Definitely, we're not at that point yet, or the Pathway Society is not at that point yet. I will note, however, that MPE Engineering is involved, and they have pledged and are donating up to $200,000 in kind towards those efforts. The fourth condition that was established in that resolution is that written permission from CP Rail must be given for the pathway to cross the railway. That as well is definitely in the works, and I know the Link Pathway Committee members are currently in discussions and negotiations with CP Rail. However, to date, again, we do not have written confirmation before us today from CP Rail that that has been given the green light. The fifth condition in that resolution is that the county, excuse me, be thoroughly involved throughout the planning and development phase of the pathway. And I would say with 4 staff members from Lethbridge County sitting on the Link Pathway Working Group, we are involved and have been involved, and I would anticipate continue to be involved in that. So that is occurring. It's an ongoing commitment. The final and sort of summarizing 6th point in that lengthy resolution is that once all of those conditions have been fulfilled, so those previous 5 that I just reviewed, Lethbridge County will approve construction of a pathway through the county from the town of Coaldale to the city of Lethbridge. So I hope that, as I say, just kind of brings everyone up to speed as to what council has committed to so far. Now, some additional background information for you. As I noted, senior staff from the county are members of the Link Pathway Working Group. This also includes the 2 founding members of the Link Pathway Committee, excuse me, Henry Doeve and Alvin Fritz, who are the champions of this project. Representatives from MPE Engineering are also involved, representatives from the SMRID, as well as Edwards Lands. In 2021 so far, we've held meetings in the months of January, March, April, and the most recent one was yesterday. As well, many of you will be aware that on Monday this week, there was a virtual public forum that allowed people to ask questions, and more information was provided to the public. And since this report was written approximately 2 weeks ago, Lethbridge County has received numerous written submissions from citizens expressing concerns, as well as a petition. These matters are, and these items are in our hands and are currently being reviewed by the CAO and by the team. The Link Pathway Committee recently received a conditional $1 million donation, and consequently, they are eager to begin construction and to have a public sod turning ceremony. The culvert for the proposed Highway 512 crossing is estimated still to be 3 or 4 months away from being designed and approved. And while negotiations with the various landowners along the proposed route are still advancing, again, I've kind of summarized, but we have not received written verification that was part of those conditions that council set, with the exception of a letter from the city of Lethbridge. As well, just to be clear for everyone, the final route of the pathway has not yet been established. So that is still in the works. There are a number of variations and various routes and options being considered, but nothing is finalized in that regard. The Vista Meadows Homeowners Association was previously informally advised that the pathway could potentially be located on the north side of the canal that borders the subdivision. However, an engineering analysis that was forwarded to the association explains that locating the trail on the north side of the canal beside Vista Meadows subdivision will cost approximately $183,000 more than if it were to be located on the south side closer to the subdivision. A written response to that information from the Vista Meadows Homeowners Association is attached to today's report because it was received some time ago. And we were looking for a further response to some of the technical aspects of that submission from MPE Engineering, but that has not yet been prepared. And in fact, it might even be a bit premature to respond officially or formally to the concerns expressed in that submission from the Homeowners Association until a decision is made as to whether the pathway may go on the north or south side of the canal. As planning for this project proceeds and construction inches closer, county administration is of the opinion that due to the magnitude and complexity of this major project, approximately up to $4 million we're told, it suggests that it would be extremely beneficial if the committee were to hire and designate a project manager. The committee is, of course, doing its best to facilitate the project, but at this point, again, county administration's perspective is what is lacking is a specific point person who has sole responsibility for ensuring timelines are being followed and all details are being managed appropriately. Currently, the project is being managed by a number of parties collectively working together, doing their best, but everyone really in effect is volunteer. And again, there's no one specific point person, and county administration feels that would be beneficial. There's a draft memorandum of understanding between the link pathway and the SMRID and Lethbridge County that is pretty close to being ready to be brought to council for consideration and to the SMRID, but that is not quite finished and not quite, we're really not quite to that point at this point where we can present that and ask for it to be signed. So again, I'll just note that the intention of this report is merely to provide council and anyone listening with an update on the status of the pathway to this point. We're not looking for any specific direction necessarily. With respect to the financial aspects of this project for Lethbridge County, or as they relate to Lethbridge County, a source of funding and a plan for capital replacement has not yet been established. Annual maintenance costs to the county will, of course, depend on the level of maintenance provided, and that as well has not yet been established. Furthermore, it will depend on how long the actual pathway might be. It could be, the latest I've heard is anywhere between about 14.5 and 17 kilometers, depending on the route that it eventually might go. So there are a couple attachments, again, to this report. Mr. Chairman and Council, I won't read them, they're fairly lengthy. Hopefully you've had a time to peruse them. But at this point, that would conclude the kind of background and the context for the Link Pathway project. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Are there any questions for Larry? So, yeah, Tori?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Larry, could you just clarify maybe three things for me?
Certainly.
And for those listening? You just touched on maintenance and funding as it pertains to maintenance. At this time, is there an agreement in place where the county has agreed to provide maintenance or a maintenance budget to this project?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair to Councillor Tori Campbell's questions. Try to remember them as I go here. But no, there is not a maintenance agreement. There is a resolution on the books from County Council from, gosh, close to 3, maybe 4 years ago that says Lethbridge County will enter into negotiations for maintenance of the pathway for $1. Those are pretty much the exact words, so enter into negotiations. So that really is still, I would say, out there and not firmly resolved to this point. As well, I am not aware, and maybe some of my colleagues here, because this was a bit of a team effort as well, putting all this information together, but I'm not aware that the county has any kind of capital budget established at this point for future capital upgrades or replacement. And again, if I can rely on my colleagues.
We don't. Also additionally, we don't really know the parameters yet of the trail. Is it going to be 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and all that would have to factor into the cost of the maintenance as well.
Thank you. If I may, I think one of the things that I have seen through the emails that we've received, and as well I've heard through the phone calls that I've received, just also again to provide clarity, the county passed a motion, as you alluded to, Larry, with several stipulations. To this point, those stipulations have not been met, and therefore we have not in any way approved the pathway as it sits. Would that be a correct summary then?
I would agree with that statement, yes.
Yeah?
And further to that, Councillor Campbell, we would not recommend to council, we administration would not recommend to council signing any kind of memorandum of understanding until these conditions have been met.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for Larry here too, that, you know, there was a proposed route that was going to be followed, and there was a change in that one. Why was the county not notified of the changes that were proposed later on? And the second question to that is, why are the people all upset while there is no final route established yet? And the third one would be the price, the amount of money that the $183,000 that it would cost more going to the north side than the south side. Get a little bit of an explanation on that one, if possible.
Sure, I can try to kick it off there. Thank you, Councillor Vanderveen. So I think your first question was, why is the route, or has the route changed? Right? So with respect to that, and again, I'll rely on any of my colleagues who wish to jump in here, but... Oh, okay. Yeah, Devin is definitely more of the technician on this, and he can, I'm sure, provide some clarity on that piece.
I can speak towards your question regarding the extra money to go on the north side of the canal versus the south side. And from the report that we got from MPE is due to having to install a couple additional bridges to cross the canal to go to the north, continue to the west, and cross back again. I think there was some other ancillary work in there included as well, but I believe it was mainly those pedestrian bridges was the bulk of the cost for that.
Okay. So, why is the route changed, or why does it keep sort of changing, proposed route?
Perhaps Henry could
Yeah. I
address
wonder.
that?
What's it? Yeah. That be fair, Mr. Chairman, if you called upon Mr. Doeve to possibly?
Okay, well, I'm sure he will talk about it when he gets the chance.
Okay.
Okay,
In short, my understanding is, you know, it's a technical undertaking to build a pathway beside a canal, beside a road, on the edge of people's properties, lots of moving parts and variables. And I think, you know, certain routes have been explored, maybe determined, gee, perhaps this isn't the best route. It's whatever, you know, not safe, too costly. There's pipes or underground infrastructure that need to be considered, et cetera. And so, okay, well, let's back it up a little bit and maybe try another route. So in general terms, I would say that's what's occurred to this point, and that's why the route, proposed route, seems to maybe still be meandering and trying to settle on, probably, excuse the pun, but the path of least resistance. So that's what I could say on that. With respect, again, to the second question I believe you posed, Councillor Vanderveen, why are people so upset if the pathway route hasn't been firmly established? And, you know, I'm not sure. I guess they're maybe trying to speak up that they don't want it near them, is what I would glean from the general submissions that we've received so far, although I will admit I haven't read them all word for word. There are many of them that are very lengthy. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, thank you.
Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for answering these questions, and I think that I'd like to hear Mr. Doeve's presentation before I ask more questions.
so Larry, I just have one, and in the many phone calls and emails I've received, one of the major questions that has been brought up is, why are they out surveying on public right-of-ways and public roads? And number two is, I guess, the lack of permission to go on people's private property. And maybe you can't answer that one, but who gave them permission to use or try and facilitate public property that's county right-of-way or owned by the county?
Right. Very good questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, honestly, I think you touched on it. I don't mean to skirt the question, but it's maybe a bit beyond, you know, I didn't authorize any of this. I'm not aware. We were surprised when we at the county administration building started hearing from members of the public that surveying was occurring too. I wasn't aware, at least maybe some of my colleagues were. I personally was not.
Well, I guess one of the major concerns is about the public roads, is roads are designed for vehicles, and I thought that if you're wanting to have a bike trail or pathway, you really don't want to have it where the traffic is. So I guess that's a major concern, and maybe perhaps Mr. Doeve has an answer to that as well. But I guess it's kind of alarming to me to find out that, you know, people are out there surveying different routes on public transportation already, and without permission, I'm going to say. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Henry, it's your turn. Henry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I being heard?
Could be a little loud.
Could be a little louder if you can.
Well, I have no volume control here. I'll just try and speak up a little more clearly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, County Council, for this opportunity to give this update, and to Larry and Devin for providing some of the background. I am here with George Lowe. He's the fellow board member. He's also board chair at the SMRID. So there was several questions and concerns raised this morning through the presentation, and some of the questions from councillors. I will try to address them as much as I can. If I haven't, then please feel free to ask more. I just want to clarify a couple things right off the bat. Larry mentioned that we had a conditional donation of $1 million. That donation is, it's not conditional. Of course, it's conditional only that the pathway gets built. But we have the first tranche of that money in our possession, so, our donor is committed, so it's not like that money could or would disappear. So just to clarify that donation that we received. And then, also Larry made reference to, there was no written, like one of the 6 resolutions then on that motion of September 22, Larry made reference to that there was no written agreement by SMRID, that first item. We do have in our possession, I thought I had forwarded it on to Anne and to Larry or to the working group, but we do have that in our possession. I can just read it quickly. So in the March 2017 SMRID Board of Directors meeting at the office in Lethbridge, Alberta, a motion was passed as follows regarding the link pathway. So we have moved that we offer, we is SMRID, to lease a portion of SMRID right-of-way between Lethbridge and Coaldale for $1 for establishment of link pathway. So we do have that agreement. So with that, other than the MOU is not signed, we have most of the, I would say 5 of the 6 recommendations, well, 4, I guess, because we're working with CP Rail and we're working with Alberta Transportation once we know the new alignment for the 512 crossing. So, but the other conditions we have met and we have documentation to show that. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Then I'll try and address some of the concerns that were raised by some of the councillors and by Reeve, Lauren Hickey. So one of the questions was from Klaus, I believe, why are people so upset if the route has not been established? I guess they start seeing, people walking around and even to address the surveying. There's been no surveying on private land. There's just been some alignment investigation done by members of Edwards Land. And I mean, I've walked the entire length on several occasions with Eric Dyson from MPE, Adam Spackman, and different representatives of SMRID. So we've been out there just exploring and just as part of our investigation of the proper alignment. The county has been notified of this was also something raised. The county has been notified of, through the working group, how the route, how the route evolves, because as you meet resistance, we look at other options. And so when we met some resistance from private landowners to the west, on the western reach, then we looked at the road 210A, which is in the St. Mary Estates area. And, it was a public road and I know we don't want to have bicycles on public roads, but bicycles are, I guess they're a mode of transportation. So we thought, it's worth to explore that. If we dropped the ball there anywhere, it was that, maybe we weren't as open and transparent with the residents of that region. But we were in no way ready to, or say, well, this was the route. The working group had not approved that. We as a group have not, we're still exploring that. So we had an open house last week. That was part of our consultation, and so through that we're trying to find a route that is acceptable to county council, but also to the residents of both Vista Meadows and St. Mary Estates. As far as maintenance, I believe Tori brought up maintenance. The MOU does address maintenance, and it does so it does address maintenance. That's part of the MOU that is being proposed, and we've worked on that as a working group. So SMRD has been involved, Lethbridge County, as well as the Link Pathway Group. I hope that kind of answers some of the issues that were raised or some of the concerns. I mean, I have a few other things too, but I believe George also wants to talk about some of the homeowner consultation that we're undertaking now as a result of our open houses with both Vista Meadows and St. Mary Estates.
Hello everyone. Thanks for having us here today. We're not professionals. Like, we're just trying to do something good. And as far as the SMRD is concerned, when we were approached by this committee to be involved in the pathway, we had to wrap our heads around it, but we're really warming up to it. We think it's a good thing for the community. And, COVID has really pushed this along and made it look even better, getting out in the fresh air and being able to do something with your family. So we're very much behind it, but like I said, we're not professionals. We don't know, we haven't done this before, and maybe we've made some mistakes with consultation with homeowners. I have to ask myself how I'd feel if a bike path went through my backyard. I'm sympathetic. I do understand that people may have reservations, and until they understand it better and look at it, well informed, I think it is a process, and we're going to have to be patient. And I suggested to Henry that we set up a consultation process that involves the individuals in these two areas, both Vista Meadows and the other area down further south. Involve these people on two separate committees to come up with a solution, like have the people who are affected have input on the solution and give it a bit more time and do the process properly. I hope that will be a way forward, and we all know that this pathway is going to happen. There's just too much public support. Maybe we haven't seen it, but I am constantly approached by people asking me when the pathway is going to be done, when's it going to be done, when are you going to start. And they're quiet, they don't get out and email the county and talk to the county, but there's a lot of support there. Henry might mention we're going to have this this Friday. If you remember last year, they did it for Halo. They had this big Friday with McCain's where they handed out fries and they had this big PR thing. They're going to do that for us. Western Tractor's going to do that for us this year. I think it's really going to increase our profile. So we've got some really good things happening, and we don't want to let go of the momentum that we've got with the big donation from CORE. Maybe asking for some patience. We're not experts at this, and I think we have a way to move forward with these two committees, and hope that you would support that.
Okay, thanks for that, George. So I guess at this point, before my final, or maybe George some closing remarks too, but my final closing remarks. If there's any questions or things for clarification that County Council would need from either George or myself at this time.
Thanks, Henry and George. Any questions for either gentleman? Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's actually a question probably for Henry Doeve. If you would have tackled this thing a little bit different, that you would have went to the people where you thought the first proposed route was too expensive, so the second one would have been going where it's proposed right now, not officially, but wouldn't it have saved a lot of hassle if you would have approached the people that would have been affected along the line? Because I think it's a great project, and I think that if people are asked, they probably would have concurred with the idea, because it's not that bad having a bike drive by your house. Maybe it's even nice to look at it. But would that have made a change?
Thanks for that clause. So as George said, we're not experts at this. We're very impatient, and I'm probably the most impatient person on our group, wanting to build this thing and push it forward. But we did have, on several occasions, we've had open houses along the time by invitation, where we tried to invite. This was before even COVID. Where we had open houses at the Norland at the time, and we had some refreshments. And I remember that one night, I believe there was 80 or 90 people there. So people were aware. I think it's not that they weren't aware, but all of a sudden it started to become a little bit more real, and maybe some of them maybe weren't aware. And so I think that's where the concern's coming from. There's not this full-out pushback, but you're right, Klaus. We probably could have done a better job of being involved with the ratepayers. So we've learned from that, and I've talked to 2 residents just last night after our own board meeting yesterday afternoon. So Tony Ramatowski and Herb Beswick from the San Mary Estates area or group have agreed to sit on a committee with us to find an alternative or a solution that can work for that community. And we propose the same for Vista Meadows. We have Deanne Newdorf is on our board, but we also will reach out and engage, try and have 2 people from that group to work with the alignment. With Vista Meadows, what we have done with Vista Meadows, we have written a letter. I'm not sure if you have seen it this morning, councillors. The intent was that you would see it. And what we're offering to the residents of Vista Meadows is, because one of the primary concerns they raised there is loss of privacy and loss of security, and roaming dogs, or even their own dogs interacting with dogs on the pathway. So we've offered to, and the other concern they raised there is some drainage issues. So we've offered to provide fencing on the back of where the properties transition to the right of way for those that are interested in that, and also to improve the drainage, so that because some of the drainage water does sit up against the bank of the canal because it's higher than the actual canal. So when we go through and construct, the idea would be that we would be in a position to add some swales to direct water to certain culverts or to certain low areas. And but we haven't heard back. We haven't sent a letter to them, but that's our proposal to do that. So and with the St. Mary's group, we're looking forward to working together with that group.
Any other questions? So Henry, I know that a lot of people have expressed their support of the project, and I don't think there's too many people who are really opposed to it. It's just in its present route, or the last route that's been proposed. It's kind of a mixture of people move to the country for peace and quiet and privacy, and all of a sudden we have a bike path, and I'm sure that it won't be just light use like you might find just down your street in front of your house. I'm sure that it'll be very well used with a lot of traffic, and along comes a few other problems that they brought up. People always bring their dogs, and there's all kinds of concerns along with that. And if they're stopping to a picnic shelter or something like that, you've kind of talked about. How do you see the maintenance of that, and making sure that's maintained properly, and all the garbage is looked after and everything? That's quite a challenge in itself. And the other thing is, when you talked about open houses, I guess judging by the number of phone calls and emails that we have received, obviously most of the people have not been involved in that process. So as a county, and as residents of the county, they have the right to be in that process, and maybe you need to start afresh here and get more people involved and go through the process. But currently, as the route sits, I don't think there's much chance of it being approved.
Right, no, I don't disagree. Maintenance of the picnic areas, and the rest areas, and they also do raise some concerns around that, right? Because they feel they might be gathering places and things like that. So, we want to make sure that it's open air, that there's no places to gather. As far as garbage receptacles and just the overall maintenance of those areas, the picnic areas or rest areas, we as a committee, will commit to working with the county to maintain and to look after those areas. So, I don't think that's that's something that we see as onerous. We do apologize to the residents that, we just haven't been more, I guess in our minds, we always knew what we were doing and what was going on, and maybe, that's where our inexperience shows up. And, we have Eric Dyson from MPE as our technical person. We have Adam Spackman from Edwards Land, the land professional, but they're not public engagement professionals, right? I mean, they're technical experts and they're exceptionally good at what their field is, and they've been a tremendous help to us as a pathway group. So that's where we will reset the clock and reset the process and engage with both those communities. And I believe, Lauren, you may know this better than I do. I had a letter last night from a Sue Mazzaros. So I think she's on that road of the equestrian center, Kilvin's Equestrian. So
Yes.
so we have some work to do in that area as well, where we would like to transition to the city.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you both. Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Just
Could I
to-
have some final words, Lauren, and a request?
Yeah, Ann's got a question, I think.
No, I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure that we let the two gentlemen that.
Yeah, I know,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, good.
Go ahead, Henry.
And what? Yeah, him
Okay,
and
so
them, yeah.
my request, Mr. Chairman and fellow councilors, is I know the MOU is close to being signed, and we as a committee are prepared to sign this MOU. And, I would propose maybe that we sign the MOU in phases, like the one we have in front of us now, that we sign that as being reflective of phase one. Phase one is from Coaldale up to the jail road. It's about a 2-kilometer stretch. It stops well short of the jail road, so there'd be no danger that walkers or cyclists could see hopping up onto 512 as an easy solution, because it'd be several hundred yards from the highway, and there's long grass, and there's a deep ditch and things there. So it's so what we as a group would really like permission and sign the MOU as reflective of phase one, that we could have our grand opening sod turning, and that we could build that stretch. SMRD is on board on that one. It's one landowner we're dealing with, and there's a few areas where we need to swap land in order, and he's agreed, because this pivot doesn't cover it. But it would just be so exciting and so nice for the region, and to show that we can start and that we can build part of it. And that we really would like to see that happen. And maybe George, you got some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, just, from our committee standpoint, and for the people, I guess it would be mostly county residents who would use it, such as myself. I would love to bike that stretch. It's long enough that it would be good exercise. It's a good stretch through some attractive farmland, and we could end it with some picnic tables and a sign that says this is phase one, phase two is being planned, and then people would turn around and head back to Coaldale. And it's a standalone little project. Even if that's all we ever accomplished, it's really well worth doing, and the SMRD is supportive of it. We've got Dennis has stood on the banks just a month or two ago, or a few weeks ago, and agreed it would be very simple to build. We have the funding from CORE, and he is super eager to see something happen. It would address a lot of issues for us, and I think it would really be helpful for the support of the community to show them what they're going to get someday, and even if it is standalone, like I said, very much well worth it because it attaches to the existing new network that Coaldale has. So I hope you can support this. It only involves one crossing, which we would have to engineer, one gravel road, that's it. And so we would have to engineer that, of course, and then we could proceed.
Ann?
Just from a perspective of looking after the county and the county's liability, I wouldn't recommend the county signing even a part MOU at this time, because there's far too many unknowns and there's far too many things that haven't been dealt with yet. So while I appreciate that it would be exciting and get the project off the ground, I don't recommend that the county sign or enter into an MOU until all the parameters have been met and that we're aware of all the factors.
Thank you. Thanks, George and Henry. Tony, did you want to speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. After this morning, basically, it's going to be echoing a lot of answers that have already been answered and a lot of concerns that have been already addressed. So basically, my name's Tony Ramatoski. I'm a resident of 210A in the area where the west leg is going to go through. I've been chosen to be representative of the people affected along the route. So far, I have gathered about 22 people in the petition. It was kind of a rush thing because we didn't have much time before today's council meeting, obviously. As of about 3 days ago, more people are finding out about this and asking how come I didn't know, and they're basically, I told them to email the city council, or sorry, the county council about it, to voice their concerns. So basically, I'm just going to start off with a little bit of my history. I was born and raised in Lethbridge. Lived on a busy road for about 6 years. Couldn't stand it. One day, my wife and I were out basically driving for a little ice cream run to Coaldale, and we stopped by where I live now. Luckily, there was a lot available there, and this place is an oasis. Basically, it's a dead-end road. Nobody knows about it. It's super quiet. And in my profession, like, that matters to me. It was very important. So then I basically, developed the land, built the house, and it took everything we had to get out there. And now, unfortunately, we believe that it's going to be bringing the city back to me, right? So with garbage, crime, unwanted guests, everything else, traffic, you name it, right? So as far as every resident on the township road and Road 84C, where the staging area basically is supposed to be, there's 3 residents there that voice their concerns very, what's the words for it, emotionally. So I'm going to tone it down a little bit on that. Obviously, they're very upset about that, due to the fact that nobody talked to them, nobody had any kind of consultation with them at all. So I just want to emphasize their concerns, because they're basically on the brunt of this. Like, they got it right beside their house. They get to open the door and there's a picnic table, basically, right? Another resident who's going to be affected on basically 3 corners of her house on 8-5, the intersection 8-5 and 210A. She's a counselor. She wanted me to emphasize she does private practice in Lethbridge, but on occasion she brings out clients who are suffering from PTSD and other emotional illnesses, and they believe that having this public area will kind of compromise their privacy. We do applaud the County Link Pathway Committee for attempting to make it happen. Like, it's a good thing for people of Lethbridge and Coaldale, but personally, I think that it would benefit only them. We bought acreages to relax, work on them. Like, to be honest with you, people in my area said, we're not gonna use it. It's basically for the city folk to come out, who want to go to the county and to bike ride, in the fields, basically. And like, they don't want them, we don't want them in our residential areas. Like, who wants to go through a residential area when you're out in the county? Basically, it's gonna give up some of our lifestyle and our privacy. We had some concerns about property values, that if we go ever to sell our house or our homes, that people are gonna say, well, there's a public pathway in front of your road. Like, why would I move out here? I'd rather just stay in the city because it's gonna be a public access road. Like, I wanna move out to the country to be private. Basically, like, the other issue was there's no communication or consultation between the affected landowners and the neighbors. And there's been no other, investigations basically on other routes made. Obviously, the videos of the pathway shows a beautiful idealization vision of this trail, and obviously it's not going to be like that. The pictures basically are going to be our dugouts out front that people are going to be looking at, and our trees that we have to maintain, and everything. Basically, they'll be looking at our landscaping. So, the other part is the risk advisor. Like, I'm not satisfied that there's been any proper risk done as far as the width of the road, how many people are going to be traveling on it, crime, everything else, right? And do we have to get different insurance because of the public people coming in? People fall into our dugouts. People go into our culverts or hurt themselves on their bikes or in our land. Like, is that going to be affecting our insurance, or is that county insurance? Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions. So, safe walking path must be built so that avid cyclers and walkers can coexist. Is there going to be a speedway or speed limits on the pathway? How are they going to be riding? Is there going to be any use at night? Obviously, if you build it, they're going to come. There's going to be dirt bikes. There's going to be quads. Like, who knows what's going to happen? The maintenance, obviously, you guys went over it. Who's going to clean up our ditches with, water bottles and garbage from people going by, dog feces, everything else. And they spoke about a fence being put up, and I don't know, like, I bought that place not to have a fence because it's nice to have just trees as my fence, basically, and I don't want to be blocked in for that. So, we did some investigations on our road. Basically, it's a cold pack road about 21 feet wide with no shoulders on either end and ditches. And then the township road 8-4C runs along the canal. It takes roughly 1 minute to drive from the start of the road to the dead end. And we actually did a survey of the residents. It includes all the members of the household to drive. Some drive back and forth from work, run errands, go to meetings, drop off kids at various events, haul horses. There's lots of tractors on that road. Bolton has a hay tractor he drives all the time, back and forth. Tractors doing maintenance. It's a fairly busy road. And that totaled about 155 a day. And when the residents, this is a few years back, we actually paid for that road. We all put our own money into that cold pack road to pave it. So then it's going to be used for public use now. I'm going to go back to the 84-C. The picnic and parking areas basically on the canal makes no sense. You're just basically giving kids an opportunity to congregate in the public area, swim or tube down the canal. That's a liability, obviously, to SMRID. They mentioned like crime in our area. They said it might go down because of this path. Like, it can't go down because there is none, because it's a dead end road and nobody comes down there basically who does not live there. So all of us look out for each other. Nothing happens basically. That's why we moved there. It's a little piece of paradise basically. So So just basically with the liability of the change there. So, like I said, litter, garbage, our taxes go up because of this. And one of the committee members actually compared this pathway to Chestermere. Like, we can't do that because Chestermere has a totally different demographic. There's no statistics actually that were given to us on hard numbers saying, yeah, I did some door knocks. Are you happy with this trail? Are you happy with this trail? There's nothing like that. It's just been word of mouth basically there's been no issues. And unfortunately, we can't just go by word of mouth saying that. And also that trail's been there for quite some time and people actually moved there and the trail's already been there. It hasn't been a new addition to their land. So they've had to put up fences and items like that. So, so right now I do respectfully request that the plan go through the properties be denied and an alternate route to be addressed by the committee, which is agreeable to all with little impact or disruption to the residents. I appreciate Henry's call yesterday regarding the being involved in the committee. We're not just going to say, no, I don't want it in front of my house. We will be willing to work with them for an alternate route. We're not just going to say no and then leave it. We're going to be working with them if he wants that, right? And as far as my members in, my neighbors in Vista Meadows, same thing. We're going to be working together, communicating for the best of our both communities here. So that's all I need to say. Thank
Good.
you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tony. Are there any questions for Tony? Anyone else wishing to speak? Would you like to speak? Yeah, I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Am I up? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council, for the opportunity to be here today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Maybe I'll just jump back to a couple of things that I heard a little earlier regarding the Vista Meadows conversation. The talk about the $183,000 difference between the north and the south alignment, I can add a little bit of clarification as to why we sort of objected to that analysis. And it really can be summarized in two real points. The first is that most of that $183,000 is to construct two bridge crossings, certainly one of which, the very eastmost bridge, we feel is completely unnecessary, as about 50 feet away the link pathway would already be crossing Range Road 205 and it could very simply cross on the north side of the canal at that point. The only reason, best as we understand, that east bridge is required is because the Link Pathway Committee would like to enjoy the county storm pond and the sort of scenic pathway and dock area that the Vista Meadows community has and currently maintains. So that bridge, half of the costs, and that's actually the more expensive bridge according to the MPE report. So right off the top, half of those costs is for a bridge that really isn't needed or desired, except for by the Link Pathway Committee. The second thing on that 183 is the MPE report didn't take into consideration any mitigation factors, fences being built, berms that have been talked about, lowering of pathways, planting of trees and vegetations to protect the privacy and security of the Vista Meadows adjacent properties. And none of that was in the MPE report, and therefore no costs were being considered against the south alignment in that regard. So I think there's a lot of questions around that MPE report and that $183,000 differential, and I think there's a lot of work that should be done and it should be relooked at. You know, another couple notes that I just sort of made in listening to everybody talk. It was mentioned that Nathan Newdorf was one of the residents, and then he is certainly one of the 8 Vista Meadows properties that are directly affected, directly adjacent to the proposed south alignment. However, there are 7 other property owners, and I do believe those 7 property owners have all previously signed a petition that I believe was given to Reeve Hickey, stating a desire for no pathway through Vista Meadows. So if there was some sort of value in name dropping the one person that is in support of it, who's actually on the committee, there's plenty of other opposition as well. So, and just one general comment I'd like to make is that, you know, the link pathway is advertised as, you know, an open air barrier free, you know, enjoy the scenic beauty and all these things. And yet they're really pushing hard for this south alignment through Vista Meadows, which requires putting up a man-made fence, which really runs contrary to the whole vision, in our opinion. You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when we can use a natural barrier, the canal itself, to act as a form of barrier from our community, and the link pathway users trespassing, dog interaction, all these things that we've already discussed. And as Tony said just prior to me, you know, nobody out here, I mean, the people that want a fence currently have a fence, and that's 2 people. And we, you know, the rest of us move out here to the county to get away from this type of traffic and this type of volume. And quite frankly, we don't want fences. Just as Tony said, that those who want them already have them, and we don't want to look out our backyards at a fence. So again, you know, these are some of the reasons why we really want the north alignment. And I feel like the Vista Meadows community has come a long way. Initially, we were very much opposed to it running through the community at all. And when there was discussion surrounding, you know, going on the north alignment, we started to quiet down because we felt like our voices were being somewhat listened to. And I think it kind of addresses another thing that council members were previously discussing about why are you starting to sort of hear opposition. Well, from the Vista Meadows side, you're starting to hear a lot more opposition because all of a sudden it's no longer going to go on the north side, and we're being forwarded reports from engineering companies that say, you know, it's cheaper to put it on the south side, and so that's what we want to do, and yet none of our safety and privacy and security concerns were factored into these reports. So of course we're going to get concerned, and we're going to start raising questions and sending emails and making phone calls, because it's not what we've been being discussed the past couple of years, and certainly not where we felt it was going. Obviously, there's a letter. I hope everybody's had a chance to read it. I won't belabor going through it all because it is quite lengthy. I will say that it easily could have been double its length, and had we known that sort of if this was going to be the forum it was going to be used in, we may have put even more content in there. But I'll just touch on a couple really quick points, and then I'll end. Vista Meadows owners, certainly the adjacent property owners that would be affected by a south alignment, you know, many of us feel that this will negatively impact the value of our homes. You know, again, people don't generally buy homes in the county to have thousands of people traipsing through their backyard. It's just not why you buy out here. And houses in our area are already historically hard to sell, and running this along the south alignment right in our backyards is probably going to make that worse. You know, from a privacy and security standpoint, you know, obviously there's foot traffic. If it's on the south alignment, you step off the path and you are literally in our backyards. You are next to children playing. You are next to sandboxes and gardens and kids playing frisbee and soccer and grandchildren visiting. And you can no longer allow these children to play unattended in their own backyards, because literally 20 feet away is a path with hundreds, potentially thousands of people walking through them in a given week. And, I appreciate George, his comment that there's a lot of public support for this, that there's a lot of public interest, but quite frankly, that's a double-edged sword for many of us. The more people you're going to tell me are going to want to use this, that means there's that many more people running in my backyard, potentially coming onto my property, potentially scoping out our houses for potential vandalism, crime, whatever else, child abduction, unintended animal interactions, so all the rest of it. So again, the more you say this is going to be used and the more the public wants it, that's more reason to not have it on the south alignment where the ratepayers of Vista Meadows are directly affected. There's nobody wants to feel like they're on display at a zoo, and if you're in your backyard having a cookout or eating on the deck or visiting with your family, in non-COVID times, of course, you don't want to feel like you're on display. Do you want dozens of people over the course of an hour walking by, hey, smells good, mind if I stop it? Like comments and just people being in your line of sight and being able to interact with you when you're trying to enjoy the privacy of your backyard. And, as ratepayers, we're entitled to quiet enjoyment of our personal property. And this pathway on the south alignment will impede that.
Brent, thank you.
Last point, I guess I'll say is that we see a lot of stuff in the media. A lot of talk about the public right-of-way by Mr. Doeve and Mr. Fritz. Especially, we see some of these comments in the media talking about how it's a public right-of-way, and but it really strips away the human component of this when you talk like that. It is a public right-of-way, but it abuts private property. It's on the south alignment, right? And there's real human beings and real families with children and grandchildren and all these things, like I've said, who are impacted by this. And it just doesn't seem at times that that's really being given the fair, I guess, attention that it is. I have plenty of other things I could continue to say, but in the interest of time, I'm probably over already. So maybe I'll mention one last thing, and that's that any memorandum of understanding between the county and the Link Pathway, the Vista Meadows community would greatly appreciate if that MOU would incorporate the mitigation strategies necessary to address our safety and privacy and security concerns. So if it does end up going on the south alignment and we have to get a fence and stuff, like what quality of fences is going to be? We don't want a chain link fence. Are we going to get a quality fence of concrete or cedar, something similar to Uplands, Ridgewood, these types of fences? And how are we going to maintain back there if we're supposed to maintain that area? How are we going to maintain back there with a giant fence in the back? We're not going to drive our lawn tractors, to the edge of the community and around the lake to come back there and mow. So is everybody going to get double-sized fences in gates in their fences and so on and so forth? Plenty of questions. So anyway, I guess I could keep going, but I'll yield back.
Thank you very much for your presentation today, Brent. So I will say we were amiss. We did receive your signed petition last year, and I should have said that earlier, so we do have that one on file. Any questions? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? No? Well, I thank you very much for your time today, and we will proceed from here. I think all we'll do today is receive this presentation for information, and we can move forward from here. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going forward, there's four county staff members on the committee and meeting sort of monthly, on a monthly basis, or as needed, I guess?
Yes, we are meeting on a monthly basis to keep everything. It's myself, Larry, Devin, and Jeremy, and we meet monthly with the society. Just for, the report was accepted as information, but there was another question about the MOU, and I really don't think that's ready to be signed at this time, but it would be brought forward to a further council meeting. But that might be not for another month or so.
Okay, so is there anything else? Because I'll call the question in. Those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, and thanks again for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and council. I appreciate the opportunity. Bye for now.
Yep, bye. Thanks, Brent. Okay, does anybody need a little break, or should we just, okay. We can have,
Candace to give Mr. Westcott a call. With regards to this particular subdivision, if you've read your agenda package, you know that this one is on Mr. Perry Wong's land, which is just south of Deer Run Estates, shown on the air photo. The agent for the subdivision has asked to be able to be on the phone in case you guys, council, would have any questions of the subdivision that they're proposing. Hello, Bob. Can you hear us? Oh, I sure can. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're in the subdivision now, so you can just listen along, and if council has any questions, they will ask. Okay? Okay. Thank you. So with regards to this particular subdivision, they are requesting to create a 30.10 acre lot from a 79.55 acre agricultural title. This proposed use does not meet the subdivision criteria of the land use bylaw and would require waivers if council wishes to approve it. So I'm going to let Steve will go through all the planning comments and the recommendation from administration. Sorry,
but
go ahead,
just
Lauren.
before you go there, this came to us once before. They wanted to get easement to that piece of land from Deer Run Estates, right? So I can't remember exactly what we did. Like, we gave them easement, but we didn't give them a subdivision at that time, or? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I definitely, Reeve Hickey, I can explain how that worked in the past, although I wasn't specifically here. I do know the history. So with regards to this particular title, if you look on the screen, you can see that there is an area that's in orange. It was, that particular area was rezoned to group country residential in about 2012. I want to say that's the date that it was rezoned. And when they were doing the whole Deer Run Estates area structure plan, there was an agreement made to include, and you'll see it as I zoom in here, you'll see that right here, connecting this group country residential area on Mr. Wong's land, there is a portion of a road right-of-way. It's a 10-meter laneway that would provide access through Deer Run Estates to this group country residential piece in Mr. Wong's land. So there, from what I have read, there was the rezoning, but they never went through with the subdivision. So they went through one step, but they didn't go through the second step.
Okay.
So that's what brings us here today, is that now they're looking to actually facilitate a subdivision on Mr. Wong's land. And they would gain access to it through Deer Run Estates using that laneway. That laneway would have to be developed to the county standard upon the successfulness of this subdivision.
Thank you.
So that's kind of, the history of that, so hopefully that helps. But I'll let Steve go through the rest of the planning comments and the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the application that's in front of you is to subdivide that 79.55 acre title there of Mr. Wong's. And the applicants have applied to subdivide the area that is all basically east of the Piami Coulee drain and use the Piami Coulee drain as the divide into kind of the east and west portion. So that area east of the Piami Coulee drain is the 30.1 acres approximately. That east area is primarily pasture land. There's no improvements present. The subdivision would encompass the flat land to the top and east of the Coulee drain, and the main Piami Coulee portion itself would still lie on the west remnant portion of the title. The applicants are proposing to build a future yard on that east portion, with the main yard area being up in the northeast corner. But they're also looking for some extra land to enable future minor non-intensive agriculture for horse pasturing. A prospective purchaser who's interested in this intends to construct a new yard with a residence, a shop, an outbuilding possibly, for sheltering maybe up to approximately 12 horses, which they use for both pleasure and as well as working on their nearby intensive livestock operation. So there may also be some future corrals constructed on that east portion. The applicant's proposing potable water to be from the Lethbridge North Water Co-op once available, and sewage would be treated by a traditional on-site septic field system. So one of the things with this subdivision is, as we just saw and Hillary explained when that group country residential zone in, the primary 79.55 acre parcel, the south half of the southwest of 31, fronts onto, on the west side to Highway 25. That back portion, whether it was this group country residential zoned area, which is approximately 7.8 acres in size, or that east half, if you use the Piami Coulee drain as the split, would be physically cut off from Highway 25. So it would have to take its access through that laneway there, as Hillary showed you earlier. Currently, the landowners do access that back east portion pasture piece. It's kind of seasonal depending on the weather and how wet it is and that sort of thing, but there is, as Hillary's showing you right there, there is kind of a crossing there, a trail that they can get across to get to the back east portion of that land in a kind of informal manner. So one of the things with this affected land as well is that the Shaughnessy sewer lagoons are located just to the south of this. And there is a required setback of 300 meters to that sewage lagoon, that no residences can be within that setback area. And that accounts for, on that rezoning to group country there that you see with that orange, why it's angled there, as Hillary's shown you, that's the buffer setback line to the Shaughnessy sewage lagoon. So at the time the rezoning was done, they used the group country residential zoning area to align with that setback buffer, because a residence can't occur within that setback buffer to the Hamlet sewage lagoon. So that's why it accounts for that curved shape that you see on the screen there with the orange for the group country residential designation, is because of the setback buffer to the sewage lagoons. So one of the, I guess, the things with the subdivision is that under normal county policy, a additional subdivision wouldn't be allowed out of 80 acre half quarter section. In this case, the actual title is 79.55 acres. But due to the Deer Run Estates area structure plan that was done and the rezoning that was put on here for group country, which is depicted or applies to this south half of the southwest of 31, a subdivision would be eligible to come out of there. to conform and be in compliance with the land use bylaw and the land use designation, that subdivision would be that approximately 7.8 acre area that's zoned to the group country residential land use district. Now, as mentioned, the applicants would like to go beyond that zoning area due to the physical features present of the Piamikuli drain there and the limited access to Highway 25, and just take the entire east portion of the Piamikuli drain there, which is that 31, results in that 31.1 acres. So to do that would require council to agree to that and consent to granting some waivers there for such a proposal to be approved. From the circulation of this application, there was no objections or concerns were received in writing. I did receive 2 phone calls from residents from the Deer Run Estates. Just wanted some more information about access to it and if there traffic was coming through the Deer Run Estates to access it. And, you know, if the person was going to have cattle on there, if they'd be moving cattle in and out through the Deer Run Estates, which is the, what do they call it, Antler Ridge Road. So I just had some questions in regards to that. We haven't received anything in writing. From the utility agency wise, there's no easements or anything like that are required by any of the utility companies. And as the access, whether it would be the 31.1 acre parcel, if you gave a waiver and approved that, or the 7.8 acre zone to the group country residential area, as it would come through that laneway and then through the Antler Ridge Road of Deer Run Estates, it wouldn't be directly to the highway. It would come through the existing access to Deer Run Estates. Alberta Transportation has no concerns or objections to the subdivision, and they're okay with that. So they won't allow another direct access onto Highway 25. One of the other aspects with the subdivision is that, and the applicant's aware of that, is that due to the Piamikuli, they will have to apply for historical resource clearance from the province. And that would apply to whether it was a 7.8 acre subdivision, if you approve that to the rezoned area, or for that whole 31.1 acre east. In either situation, they will have to apply to the province to obtain historical resource clearance for the subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You were saying that, you know, they wanted maybe pasture to have some animals and stuff in there with the access through Deer Run there, but, so right now, has never been any access to it? Have there been cattle there, or has anybody used that land, or is it just never been used?
I mean, thank you, Councillor Ranjithine, through the chair. I mean, that's not necessarily knowledge that we have of if there's ever been animals on there. There very possibly could be. You can see on the, I'll just zoom in a bit, you can see that there is clearly a goat trail type track that goes from the west to the east that obviously it has been accessed at some point in time. But whether or not there's been animals on there before, it's not that I've ever driven by and noticed specifically, but there definitely probably could be.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember very clearly when Deer made an application there, and that Patty Wong was somewhat involved too, and that's why they got granted that access through Deer down there.
Mm-hmm.
We just probably got to put a different, another condition on it that no big cattle use that, but horses, you know, truck and horses. Okay, there's no cattle if you go. The that's just a recommendation you probably have to add.
Yeah, sir, I can. Thank you, to Mr. Chairman. So, with regards to access, they probably, because it's a residential area and the road there would have been developed to a residential standard, if you probably wouldn't be allowed to have, or we would probably discourage any heavy use traffic out there. But I could confirm that at the time of, if and when the subdivision is approved, that would be something that I would work with Devin and Jeremy to ensure that those conditions would be met.
Yeah, Perry, puts cattle on there every year. Not very many, just enough. Yeah, the other one is that, thank you, Mr. Chairman, is that you said the potential buyer of that is maybe interested in building corrals, but did they kind of laid it out what type of corrals? Is it just the corrals to corral these few horses they're going to have there maybe, or is it a...
Yeah, Mr. Chair. To answer Councillor Zeenstra's question, the intention is for the horses. They want to have for some of their horses to perhaps eventually put a few corrals there just for horse confinement. Okay. Yeah, so the other aspect I was going to bring up is if either the 31.1 acre was agreed to by council and you gave a waiver to approve that, or the 7.8 acre subdivision was approved, the municipal reserve requirements would be applicable on the subdivision. So it did get a reserve value back. It came in at $6,250 an acre. So on the 7.8 acre subdivision, that would be approximately $4,875 plus or minus. And on the 30.1 acre subdivision, that would be $18,812.50 plus or minus, based on the final plan that would come in, but they'd have to pay on municipal reserve. So there is on either subdivision, on the approval, there would be a municipal reserve requirement that they would have to pay on that. So the other aspects of the subdivision is that there's no confined feeding operations in the area that the MDS would be. I mean, there are some in proximity, but the MDS is not compromised in approving the subdivision on that, so it meets that. And there's no abandoned gas wells either that would affect the subdivision there. So, so really here, the question for you is, and the resolution presented in front of you is based on compliance with the land use bylaw and the area that was previously rezoned by council as part of the Deer Run Estate subdivision to just approve the 7.8 acres to be in compliance with what you see on the screen there. So on that resolution to you then, that would require a condition to reduce the parcel size so it does not exceed 7.8 acres to correspond along with the area zoned to group country residential, just due to the fact that they applied on their application for the 31.1 acres. Now, it is acknowledged that this isn't the highest quality agricultural land, and Piami Coulee Drain does cut through there, as you can see. If this quarter section wasn't previously subdivided with Deer Run Estates and such, it was a full quarter, the Piami Coulee Drain normally could be used as a division, it would be a cut-off parcel division, a physical feature. But since it's only a less than 80 acre title, that subdivision criteria, doesn't apply. So the applicants are asking, you see the merit and what they've applied for, and that it is poor quality land physically divided by the Piami Coulee. And the proposed prospect purchaser has some plans that he could use that land on the east side there, so they would like the entire area east of Piami Coulee, which is a 31.1 acres. To do that would require waivers to be granted. So I do have two resolutions here, just depending on what you go. Part of that is, depending on what you approve, if you did approve the 31.1 acres, there'd be a couple different conditions on there than on the draft resolution in front of you based on the bylaw and the rezoning for group country, which would be to reduce and just approve the 7 acres as zoned, as you see on the screen there.
Any questions? I have a couple come to my mind. So if you were to go with the larger subdivision, would you be allowed to build another residence on the outside of the group country residence?
No. Because it's within the buffer of the Shaughnessy Lagoon.
So then that residence is on the other side of the group? Was existing?
Yeah, that was a pre-existing residence.
So when, I'm just not quite sure, the way the map is there room to go past the opposite residence there, the residence, Mr. Wong's residence, to build over up on the hill there by 21?
Okay, if you look on page, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'll just get the page. We did show on page, thank you, page 13 of your agenda package, the actual buffers, or the actual buffer around the sewer lagoon. So you can see where that 300 meter ends. It's not quite, I mean, it does leave some area to the, in that northwest corner, if that's the question that Mr. Chairman had with regards to development.
Okay, so could they build up there?
Yep, they could.
Okay, so technically you could have, four more houses there.
Only,
You could have three on the 7.8 acres, right?
no,
No?
they can only have one.
Oh,
Because it's only a single subdivision, Mr. Chairman. They only have a single access for a single lot. They can build a single residence.
well then why is it group country residential?
It's group country residential because of the agreement that Mr. Wong made when the Deer Run Estates development was approved back in 2011. But they are only permitted to have a single parcel,
The most you have is 2 houses.
just one.
No, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Get the other one.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, maybe just to add to that, the reason, like normally, they wouldn't be allowed another subdivision out of that 79.55 acres. So as part of the Deer Run, and the arrangement that was made at the time with, between the developer, Mr. Wong and such, and the county agreed at the time when they did the rezoning, was that they would rezone that northeast corner there for some concession and such, but to create one parcel. But because normally a 79.55 couldn't get a 7 or 10 acre subdivision out of there, it was removed from the rural agriculture zoning to have group country, because group country zoning allows for a subdivision, but it would just be for one. The intent was just one subdivision, not 2 lots or 3 lots or that type of thing. It was just so he could get a subdivision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, of course, so the residence will be built almost butted up to the Deer Run then, because that's the only place they can have it because of the distance they need from the lagoon, right? The other one is, I kind of missed that, Steve, when you said something about they got to apply to the province because of a historic site, or?
The historical resources clearance is required because of the Piami Coulee is considered a historically significant area. So they have to get clearance for any development on that particular area. And it's something that commonly happens in areas next to coulees, rivers, anywhere like that where there is some potential for historical significance, so.
Any other questions? There are no other questions. So here we should be a little bit larger or smaller or?
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With it being a coulee, a cutoff parcel, I'd be good with it going to the bigger parcel. I guess there'd be a slight concern that the animals, that the animal numbers would stay at that 12-ish number, and I'm sure the residents of Deer Run would have that concern too if they knew there was going to be animals over there, just for trucks coming in and out, or, but I'm sure they're not going to be hauling them in and out daily either, so but it's just that extra traffic, I guess, for the area, than the bigger traffic, I guess.
Turn that on. Somebody's talking on the
No,
phone, no?
It's just the
Oh.
feedback.
Oh. So did I not read in here that they were going to use these horses in the, as pen checker horses?
That's,
So would they be going in and out all the time, or?
that could be a potential, Mr. Chairman, yes.
So that would create quite a bit more traffic if they did that.
Mhm.
So that might be questionable.
I mean, if they're just using a horse trailer, it would increase traffic if they're coming in daily or however often you would come in and out. So that, I mean, but as long as it was more of that passenger type vehicle traffic, it probably wouldn't have too many negative impacts on the road. It would be if they're using like a cattle liner to move animals around, that could be the concern, right? Is that road was not developed for that particular use.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Steve?
And, yeah, I don't know if Mr. Westcott on the phone too, if he has any more details or information on that, of what their plans are. He's been working with the applicant, Mr. Wong, and the prospective purchaser on that regarding the horses. But if you are looking at granting the waiver and doing the 30.1 acre subdivision, I'll maybe go over those conditions for you.
Okay.
It'll be a little bit different, so.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
All right. So, in approving the 31.1 acre would require a waiver of a council, and that the conditions would be that the municipal reserve is paid on the 30.1 acre, or whatever, based on the final plan that comes in at the $6,250 per acre. The municipal reserve would not be applicable on the west side because it would exceed 40 acres in size. So you can't take it on a parcel over 40 acres. The conditions would be that any outstanding property taxes are paid and up to date. Second, that a development agreement is entered into with the county, which would address provisions such as if there's any stormwater drainage requirements, but in particular would be for that access laneway development there for the parcel. The third would be that the applicant has to apply for the historic resource clearance, and once they obtain that, file a copy prior to final endorsement of the subdivision. That they'd have to submit a final plan of survey based on council's approval here for the 31.1 acre parcel. And then fifth, I'm suggesting that a copy of architectural controls be approved to register on the two parcels to act as a building restriction, sort of sense, that would just specify what buildings and the residents cannot be built within that 300-meter setback to the hamlet of Shaughnessy sewer lagoons. Now, that is a rule that has to be followed anyways, but we know from experience sometimes people buy these larger parcels and they don't know where that actual distance is, and stuff creeps into the setback area. So for a prospective purchaser or down the road if they sell it, it would just be good to have something on title telling people, hey, you can't you can't put certain buildings and structures within that 300-meter setback, or also if there's, if the county wants any setbacks a little bit further away from the Piami Coulee also, that could be specified in that restrictive covenant, just so kind of everybody's aware of the situation. So that would be my suggestion.
That could also be a mechanism for limiting potentially the use, some, like those external uses on there.
That could also, yeah.
So if there's a concern other than that animals, like, that would be a mechanism for us to use to ensure that if what they say they're gonna do is what they're gonna do.
Okay. Any other questions? So we need somebody to make a motion then. Ken?
Recommendation. Subject, the application is to create a 30.1 acre lot with the title of from 75 or 79. The proposal does, oops, no, that's the wrong one. Okay, the subdivision application of 2021-03 be approved subject to conditions including a reduction in parcel size as outlined in the draft. Is that the right one?
No?
No.
No?
Yeah.
You're going for the 30.01 acres?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so your motion, would- Mr. Chair, so the motion would be to approve the waiver and approve the 31.1 acre as applied for.
yeah, yeah.
30.1.
30.01. No?
30.1.
Okay? Ken? Yep. Any, Morris?
Now, the only thing I would like to see in there, the motion is good, should be another condition on there, and that should be, you know, not to have cattle lines going to deer and because, you know,
Could be captured
there's
in
quite a few acres along there, the deer run already, but use that horse and the trailer. I mean, horse and the truck and the trailer, but, no cattle.
So,
Go ahead, Hillary.
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Zeenstra, we can capture that in those architectural controls. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'm going to call the motion then. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's move down to the next subdivision, which is subdivision 2020-0-149. And it's a final endorsement request to register a parcel revision for Skiba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this subdivision is one that County Council had recently approved back in January. But the applicant has come back asking for an amendment to the size. And so because the size change is more than an acre, as per the subdivision regulations, we have to get your county council's approval for that, the difference in size. They want to go from 6.92 acres to 7.97 acres in size. And I do believe they're changing the configuration a little bit. So,
Triangle to a square.
yeah, they're going from a triangle to a rectangle. So I will let Steve go through the comments and any details pertinent for this application.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is, we don't bring to you too often, but I need your approval in order to endorse the final subdivision they want to do. As Hilary mentioned, they had got an approval back in January for a 6.92 acre subdivision which was based on them planning to put a future pivot on there, and so they had it angled. And now they would like to do more of a rectangular parcel squared off the corner, and that comes in at 7.97 acres. So as part of the endorsement process, I have a little bit of discretion. So, I mean, sometimes based on a tentative and what the surveyors do in the field, you might have the line move a foot over or something, you know, account for something out on the field, whatever. But I don't have discretion that if something's over an acre, I can't, and Len's at the office there, as part of the final review, I do a final review. My role is to make sure that the subdivision county council approved is what's in front of me at the end, and the plan matches and all the conditions are met, that I sign off on, and then our director Lenz reviews everything a final time and signs on it too. And because both the layout's a bit different and the parcel size will result in it being enlarged to 7.97, I need you, as the subdivision authority, to agree to that, to give us permission to sign off. So basically, just as some background, this parcel is part of a family estate settlement. There's a number of family members involved. Actually, when they first came to me to talk about subdivision, what they're asking for now is what they originally talked about. And then as part of the process in the family, trying to settle things, in the portion of land that was going to the agriculture portion, one family member and the other family member is getting the yard. They decided to go with the other configuration, like to angle it. I guess there are talks with NIED. It's going to take a lot longer to get irrigation there than what they originally thought or planned. And now, just as part of the state settlement, they decided to go back to their first proposal and square it off to the corner. So it still meets the bylaw. It's still first parcel out. Everything complies. We did recirculate it out to all the utility agencies just to make sure that nothing would change for utility agency that where before they said they didn't need something, and all of a sudden it's cutting through a gas line, so we need a gas line easement or something like that. All the utilities responded that it wouldn't change anything, it doesn't affect them, so they're okay with this reconfiguration parcel to be registered. So there's no concerns there. So as it is still, first parcel out, it meets the bylaw. You know, you have the option to not approve their request, and the original one from January would stand, and then they have option either to then proceed and register that, or if that's not what they wanted, they would have to reapply and go through the subdivision process again to bring this in front of you to try to get your approval. And then if you refused that, they could appeal that to the appeal board. So the recommendation is, since it complies with the bylaw, is to consent to their request and authorize the reconfiguration and parcel size. So the resolution that I presented to you is a bit different than what you see in the subdivision, because you're not approving the subdivision itself that's already been approved. You're just authorizing that we can endorse this revised plan based on this new survey by Brown O'Connor and Associates to enable the amended parcel size and rectangular configuration to account for the existing yard improvements, fence line and tree shelter belt, provided the final parcel size does not exceed 7.97 acres. So you're just authorizing the final change in plan that we can endorse that for land titles. Does that make sense?
Yes? Any questions? It's pretty straightforward. No questions? Somebody want to move it? Claus? Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Hey, Steve, there was only one of the first one. Oh. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was an additional subdivision that it was, for some reason, didn't show up in your original agenda package, but it was approved by administration.
Can I ask a question, please? Mr. Chairman?
I guess so. What is it?
Well, you know, we've been connected for, damn near 50 years with the Ward family, and then we refrain from discussion.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Morris is recusing himself from the discussion on the next subdivision.
Well, who is it for?
The Borrises?
Oh, okay. He is a partner, yeah, okay, you can leave the room.
He was a business partner, so I suppose it would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can leave the room, Morris.
We still today, I don't know.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
You should leave the room, though. Morris.
No, get out.
You'd like to listen in, wouldn't you?
Don't worry, I can listen to the door.
Okay, he'll have his ear to the door, so no worries.
So I think everybody now has that particular agenda report in front of them, though, for subdivision application 2021-0-042 for the Boris family.
Yeah.
Review? Okay. So this application is to create a 5.25 acre parcel. It's the first parcel out of a quarter section, and it would be for country residential use. This particular subdivision does meet the criteria of this county's land use bylaw. It is located approximately 4 miles north of the town of Picture Butte, 1 mile west of Highway 843. And Steve will go through the comments and the recommendation.
Mr. Chair, this application is to subdivide out the first parcel from the quarter section, which is for an existing established farmyard. The yard contains a dwelling, there's 2 shops, some multiple sheds, tree shelter belt and such, as you can see in the photo there. A clean, well-developed yard. The yard area includes land to the north there, which is where their septic system lies, which has to be included with the parcel. Presently, they get their potable water from the rural water line, and access is from that West Municipal Road allowance. During the circulation of this application, there was no objections or concerns received, and none of the utility companies require any easements. Everything's in place. In looking at the confined feeding operations, there are some in the area. Up here, of course, north and west of Picture Butte, but it meets any of the MDS to any of the nearby operations. The closest one, meets it by 3 times what's needed, so there's not an issue there. So it is eligible for subdivision as the first parcel out of the quarter section. The 5.25 acre yard area conforms to the bylaws parcel sizes, meets the minimum 2 acre and does not exceed 10 acres. And the remnant agricultural size also, for the agricultural land, also exceeds the bylaw requirements. So with that, and with no objections received on this as a first parcel out, I have recommended approval to you. And in this case, it would just be with the conditions of the taxes being paid up to date, a development agreement enter into if required. Likely nothing will be needed on this one, but and then that they submit their final plan of survey that matches your approval here today. So it would just be those 3 conditions.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Claus.
I'll move that subdivision application 2021-0-042 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Any further discussion? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Not approved.
We're deeply concerned over that fact. Yeah. I guess we might as well move down to G, Department Reports, Community Services, Planning and Development Department, first quarter report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the Planning and Development's first quarter report for 2021. In 2021, so far to date, we've been working on a couple of projects, as you are probably well aware of. We did finish the Diamond City and Shaughnessy Hamlet growth studies, which were both approved by County Council earlier this year. We've commenced the review and update of the Lethbridge County Municipal Development Plan, which we've met a couple times now with Council, and we'll be meeting with you again on next Tuesday. And we also completed the sale of the residential parcel in Turin. So that's some good news. That parcel, they've already, just so you know, they've already applied to put a new residence on that parcel. So that's kind of a good growth moment for the hamlet of Turin. With regards to the Development Authority, we've had 84 development permit applications were received between January and March 31st. This is a significant increase from last year when we only had 39 applications that were submitted. 80 development permits have been issued so far this year. One permit application was withdrawn, one was refused, and 12 applications were under review at the time of writing this report. Of the applications that were issued, 26 of them were for residential purposes, so that could be a new residence in addition to a residence. Mostly those are what those are for. 14 were for accessory buildings such as personal shop, sheds, and garages. 14 commercial industrial, which includes some new development, but also some changes in use where we have a new business coming into the county, occupying an existing space. 17 agricultural structures, so farm shops, hay sheds, etc., that exceed the 1,000 square feet. 1 application for signage, 5 home occupations, and 3 institutional. I will note it does seem like we're getting more home occupation applications coming in, so that's probably just a sign that people are looking for different ways to diversify themselves, which is good for the county. With regards to building permits, which are issued by Park Enterprises between January and March, the following safety codes permits were submitted. So 60 building permits, 126 electrical, 83 gas, 36 plumbing, and 13 private septic disposal system applications. In the first quarter, County Council acting as a subdivision authority approved 10 subdivisions, which is probably about where we sit normally at this time of year. There has been no subdivision or development appeals for this year. With regards to bylaws, for road closures, we had second and third reading of bylaw 20-007, which was the road closure out by what we call the Lucy Howe subdivision. It's just in between Coaldale and Lethbridge on Township Road 9-2. We had 4 redesignation applications come in. We had the Hamlet of Monarchs Water Tower rezoning, which was approved by County Council, and that subdivision has been approved, and we are currently working on finalizing the subdivision so that those lots can be put up for sale this summer. We also have 3 applications that were under review, 2 of which you will hear today. There's 21-008, which is an application to go from rural agriculture to group country residential. 21-009, which is applying to go from rural agriculture to rural general industrial for a new business. And then 21-011, which is north of Colehurst, which is looking to go from rural urban fringe to group country residential. 21-012, which is north of Colehurst, which is looking to go from rural urban fringe to group country residential. 21-013, which is applying to go from rural agriculture to rural general industrial for a new business. And then 21-014, which is applying to go from rural urban fringe to group country residential. We also have an area structure plan that's been submitted that coincides with that last rezoning, and it's for the, as I mentioned, north of Colehurst, and it is currently under review. I forgot to put in my report, but we do have a text amendment to the land use bylaw, which I will get to you later today. And that text amendment is driven by county administration. Just over time, we like to update it to make sure that we're being current with provincial and federal legislation. And then also if we notice that there's some issues that need to be resolved in terms of implementation of the bylaw. And lastly, for intermunicipal relations, we haven't had too much activity, at least in the planning and development side. And intermunicipally, there's been other things that have been going on, obviously. For myself, we had the Town of Colehurst and Lethbridge County Intermunicipal Development Plan Amendment, which was approved by County Council on February 25th through that special public hearing that we had. We anticipate over probably the next year or so that we will have some more activity with regards to our intermunicipal neighbors. There may be some changes to the City of Lethbridge County Intermunicipal Development Plan, just to, as they're updating their municipal development plan, there may be some anticipated changes to that, which we'll probably get to, I would say, in the latter part of this year. So with that, the only thing that's otherwise noteworthy would be our financial impact and our contract that we have with Park Enterprises. To March 31st, the county has received $31,108.11 in revenue from Park Enterprises for the issuance of safety codes permits. And this is slightly up from last year, where we were sitting just around $27,000 in revenue. With that, I will open it up if there's any discussion for council, or you have any questions with regards to any projects that we are working on.
Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to see that there is still quite a bit of activity on that end of it going on in the county, so that's great. And with that, I would move this report for information.
Any other discussion or questions, Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think on your last quarterly report, the last 3 years was about 160 development permits in a year. Was that sort of correct?
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, through the chair. Usually for year end, last year we were at 189. And we've been ranging between, I would say, 180 to 210, kind of over the course of the last 8 years. So a little bit of variance. So we're looking in very good shape this year.
And then another question on when you mentioned the home occupations, if someone were to have a hairdresser or be an accountant out of their house, does that change the mill rate portion at any portion for their yard or their house or anything like that?
No, the home occupation is just a permit, just so that we kind of know what's going on if there's a use that's on the property. But because they're not changing anything with regards to the improvements on the property, there's no, unless they were building a new building, their taxes would not change.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'd be more some of the bigger ones
Yeah.
if they built a shop or something.
Yeah, when it's only based on the improvements, and if it would go from, say, more residential to having that maybe semi-commercial type, then that's where the changes in tax structure would be.
Okay, thank you.
So Hillary, just a question, you had said, I think you should refer to a shop or a building, farm building under 1,000 square feet, didn't need a permit or does need a permit?
It does not need a permit from us. So
Okay.
anything under 1,000 square feet, as long as it meets the setbacks to a road or a property line, you don't need a development permit from the county for that. So if you're building like a small storage shed, that's fine, as long as it's for agricultural purposes, obviously. So grain
Okay.
storage or farm equipment storage, things like that.
Okay, Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we're on that topic, so what if somebody just has a home occupation and they're making, like, for example, 6 figures with home occupation? Would they have to pay extra taxes?
No, I don't believe so, I mean, that's on their income taxes, but it's not on their property taxes.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just note on the next three bylaws, if it's council's desire to go through those three right now, they're all for first reading, so.
Okay.
You want me to carry on?
Go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were just going to.
Sorry, I kind of jumped the gun there a little bit. So the first bylaw that we have, Mr. Chairman, is for bylaw 21-008. This is a land use bylaw amendment to go from rural agriculture to group country residential. And it is in a previously subdivided parcel in the Northwest 5, 8, 20 west of the 4th. Just to get council's bearings on this, this is directly west of Highway 4 and about a mile, a mile north of Highway 508. Let me just put on my, there we go.
Right there, yeah.
There you go. It's this 10-acre parcel just in that particular corner north of the canal. So as I mentioned, this is for first reading of this bylaw. The applicant has put in this application so that they may be able to, if approved by county council, that they would be able to subdivide this parcel into two separate titles. They were required to rezone to group country residential because there are already a number of parcels out of the quarter section, as you can see. And as such, they would be required to rezone to country residential to facilitate this particular subdivision.
So Hillary, just on that, would they have to also do an area structure plan?
For a two-lot subdivision, Mr. Chairman, we don't require an area structure plan. When it's just two lots, we require the rezoning. If it's 3 to 4 lots, we require a concept plan to be accompany it to tell us how the drainage and servicing is. And if it's 5 or more, there would be the area structure plan.
And the only reason I ask you that is because when you go across the road, there's probably 8 residents over there and
Yeah.
one to the north there.
This is
Oh, not, sorry, there isn't one to the north. Yes, there is one to the north there.
Yeah, there's Manzer Trucking to the north
Yeah.
there. With regards to this, because it's contained within that quarter section, I felt it was okay to just have the rezoning. The other parcels are ineligible for subdivision at this time just due to their size and configuration to the west and to the north. But if it's council's desire to have more like a concept plan or an area structure plan accompany it, we can always request that of the applicant.
No, and the only reason I ask that is because there's getting to be quite a few houses there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I just based it off of the fact that this was in, kind of contained within the quarter, and the cutoff to the north, I didn't include in there.
Okay, so that would include, if they were to make 2 lots, that would be one for their existing residents and one new one.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just the 2. So, sorry, let me carry on there. So with that, the recommendation is that first reading of bylaw 21-00 be read a first time. And this will allow for county administration to set the date for the public hearing and to also send out the notices of the bylaw.
Bob?
Okay, I'll move to bylaw 21-008 be read the first time.
Any further discussion? Call a question, those in favor. Opposed? Carried. Okay, let's do bylaw 21-009.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This next application is to just actually south of this particular area, south of Highway 508 and east, also west of Highway 4. This application is to redesignate a 5-acre portion of the Northwest 33-720 west of the 4th from rural agriculture to rural general industrial. The applicant has stated they're requesting this rezoning so that they can construct a hemp straw processing facility. As I do believe that's part of what this particular farming operation handles, and they want to capture that particular part of the market by adding the value here versus sending it off somewhere else. This application has been circulated to county departments and external agencies for review and comment. The external agencies would include Alberta Transportation, most specifically. This particular area is, I'll just note to council, but we'll get into further discussion with regards to this at the public hearing. This is an area that we have identified in our commercial industrial land use strategy as an area where we could see future commercial and industrial growth based on the proximity to the highway network, and that there is already existing industrial commercial development in the area. There's the P&H grain handling facility is in that area already. And then the Taylor Business Park is to the north. So with that, the recommendation just for today is that Bylaw 21-009 be read a first time, and that will allow administration to set the date for the public hearing and send out the notices of the proposed bylaw.
Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the road network from the Taylor Business Park. That's that red line, and then just south down the right-of-way, is it? Down
Yeah,
that
it's
beside the
this-
triangle? Okay.
Yeah, it's the northernmost portion of this corner here. And I will note that it is the high spot on this particular land. I'm sure
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman
yeah.
is well aware of the drainage issues in this area. Devin and I have already looked into that to ensure that they were there looking at constructing is not in the low spot.
Yeah, go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that is going to be used for a hemp
Hemp straw.
operation, but what type? Just a straw or?
Just the straw,
Just a straw, so
yeah.
5 acres doesn't seem to be not that big for when you get the straw coming in.
Through the chair, I did confirm that size with the applicant just to ensure that that was accurate in terms of their needs, and they said that's what they're anticipating they will need at the beginning, like at this point in time, so.
So on the little description of what they plan to build, is the little black dots or arrows or whatever, is that the north, or how's that kind of
Yeah,
line
their
up?
first image that you see there that has the blue background is a little bit hard to orient, I would say. The black dots are actually facing to the west.
No, yeah, I see, actually, I think that's the south.
Yeah, sorry, south,
Yeah.
along the roadway,
Yeah.
facing south.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, any other questions? Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move first reading of bylaw 21-009.
Any further discussion? Call the question, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And 21-013.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned in my quarterly report, this is a text amendment that administration is proposing for county council's consideration. I will note, I didn't send this out yet for any external review, as I wanted to ensure that county council had no outstanding concerns with the amendments that are being proposed. So with regards to this particular amendment, we are updating and clarifying the land use, the land uses within the rural agriculture, rural urban fringe, Lethbridge urban fringe, group country residential, and the rural general industrial and hamlet residential districts. And there's not a lot of changes within all of those. There's just a few minor changes, but there is some updating that was felt to be required. We are also addressing some changes made by the Municipal Government Act, specifically to the subdivision and development appeal process, which requirements for development permit notifications. You may have heard through the grapevine, Bill 48 was passed by the province in December. That changed a few things with regards to how municipalities handle appeals and also permitting notifications. So it was thought that this would be a good time to update those. We also would like to clarify the types of documentation that would be required during at the time of a development permit application. There's just been some confusion as to what is required, so we want to make it a little bit clear for our citizens when they come in and apply. Clarifying languages around fences within residential areas. As we know, good fences make good neighbors in urban areas, so we want to make sure that that's clear what that expectation is. Signage for home occupations, there was just a need for clarification on what was allowed. Clarification on language around development in flood areas. Some people have been trying to circumvent some provincial requirements around developing in flood areas, and we want to make sure that our land use bylaw is meeting the requirements under the MGA for that type of development. We also would like to update the land use bylaw to align with the federal regulations around the different types of cannabis facilities. Over the last number of years since that legislation was approved by the federal government, they have refined and clarified some of the uses, let's say. And so in looking at this and in talking to just people within that are looking to develop these types of facilities, it was thought that this would be a good opportunity to update those and align with federal legislation instead of kind of being on our own. I'm not proposing any changes that would change anything with regards to retail sales. This is just with regards to what we call nurseries and production facilities. And then also updating the definition section. So it sounds like a lot of amendments. There's a lot of small amendments, all of them of which I have vetted through with Steve Hardy, Larry, and Sarah in the office to ensure that we're capturing some of those updates that we feel would be important at this point in time. They are in detail in your agenda package. If you had a chance to look through them, I'm more than open to answering any questions at this time. I really want to make sure that I've captured the essence of what we want to do here and the intent correctly. With that, my recommendation is to approve first reading of this particular bylaw, and we would set the public hearing date for sometime in the summer, later, probably in August, because we do want to send this out to our intermunicipal neighbors if County Council's agreement to that, and also to the external agencies for review. Some options that County Council may have, if you read through them and you have some concerns, I can do a more robust review with Council if you feel that would be important. Or County Council may choose to just not do the amendments at this point in time. This would probably just stale date the bylaw a little bit, but I would anticipate that we would have we could do a more thorough review at some point in the future. So there are options available. We just felt that there's some changes that could be done now that would bring some clarity to the bylaw and some ease of some certain developments, particularly in the commercial industrial area, to occur, and trying to align with the province's requirement for red tape reduction.
Are there any questions on any of it? Claus?
I'll move that bylaw 21-013 be read for the first time.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Oh, Ann?
Lunch is here.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
timing. And I'm pleasantly surprised that after sending it to Alberta Transportation that they've been moving these road closure applications through a little bit faster. So I have the pleasure of bringing it back for council approval on second and third reading. So this was the closure of a portion of road right-of-way in Turin to facilitate the landowners who have been occupying our right-of-ways already. So just turning that formally over to the Turin Community Association and then to the adjacent landowners there. This road closure did receive ministerial approval from the Minister of Transportation, and so as such, County Council can now proceed with second and third reading of the bylaw. If the bylaw is ultimately passed, the adjacent landowners, being the Turin Community Association and Ms. Mason and Mr. Hilargi, will consolidate the road closure areas into their parcels, which are located to the south. The county, in doing this particular road closure, did retain the drainage area that goes along the existing First Avenue to facilitate the drainage for future development in that area. So with that, that's my very brief report with regards to this particular road closure. The recommendation is that County Council approve second and third reading of this bylaw. If Council, the options that Council has is that they may choose to refuse second reading of the bylaw. This would mean that the road closure area, there would be no road closure for this particular part of First Avenue. So they would just remain intact, and we would have to deal with the existing encroachments that are there. It would also leave that there would be this remnant of road left in place. If you recall, this road closure only deals with up to this particular boundary, so just in front of those two landowners' properties. The rest of the road closure area was closed by resolution and is consolidated, or it will be consolidated with the Papworth property to the south. The other considerations, I guess, for County Council, if they're looking at weighing the pros and cons of this particular bylaw, is that if we don't, if there's no, council decides not to proceed, then we'll have to look at the maintenance of this particular area over time. So with that, I will put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. Are there any questions or any discussion on this? Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move the recommendation that bylaw 20-0-18 be read the second time.
Again, any discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And third reading? Morris?
Yeah, I'll move so bylaw 20-0-18 be read the third time.
Again, any questions or discussion? Seeing none, call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And next one is Policy 144, Area Structure Plans, Request to Rescind.
That's me again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've probably been aware, over the last 6, 8, 9 months, we've been going through a lot of the county policies and determining whether are they still valid, do they need to be amended, or should they be rescinded? Are they no longer relevant to the county's strategic plan and how we want to move forward? So I was looking at, I was tasked to look at the policy 144, which is area structure plans. This particular policy has been in effect since 2005. And the intent of this particular policy was to assist in the development of area structure plans where there was a large number of landowners, more than 10 with an area of 80 acres or more, and if they wanted to develop their area and for the most part this would have been for residential purposes. So this policy to date has been enacted once, and that was for the Section 26 area structure plan. I am pretty sure that this policy was actually put in place specifically for that particular area, because in looking at the county's other parcels and how we could see development folding out, there are really no other areas where this particular policy, as it's written, would apply. Section 26 was a very specific and special area that did require some assistance if it were to ever be developed. So we did create that area structure plan. It was approved by council in 2018. And so in looking at this policy, in my opinion, there isn't, how it's written today, there is no areas where it would apply. In the last few years, I think what council's done in terms of moving forward area structure plans, maybe more for the industrial or concept plans for industrial development and growth, where we seem to be wanting to focus more of our development, is that council has put in the budget funds to help if somebody wants to create wants to have some assistance from the county in doing a concept plan. We have funds put away to help do that and facilitate that kind of development. So that's where, so when kind of going back and looking at this, I feel that this policy is no longer relevant, and that county administration, in conjunction, I've talked to Ann and Larry about this. We have determined that this policy could be rescinded, and it would not negatively impact our ability to assist in the development of, say, commercial or industrial areas as defined in the commercial industrial land use strategy.
I can think of one other piece of land we might have had to use it on, and that's the one beside the Rainbow Riding, just right across the canal from Vista Meadows.
Oh.
You remember that schmoz mess?
Yeah.
Where there was a whole pile of landowners, but only one person on the title?
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, they were able to resolve that on their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right, Mr. Chairman, that could have been another instance. And I did include in the agenda package, you could read through the entire policy for yourselves. It was really quite lengthy in terms of what it entailed and then the requirements. So that's why I was saying it was very restrictive in the type of requirements it had. And just how we've been dealing with developers, both residential and commercial industrial senses, is that, you know, we have other mechanisms to deal with that, I think a lot, that are better than using this type of policy.
Okay. Any questions for Hillary? Seeing none? Oh, go ahead, Klaus.
I'll move that with policy 144, area structure plans, be rescinded.
Any further discussion on that? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Great,
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. And let's move down to G 1.7, invitation expressed to members of council to attend the virtual EDA, which is the Economic Developers Association Annual Conference. Go ahead, Martin, anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you and members of council here. My items are brief and I think fairly straightforward. Item G 1.7 is just an open invitation to any member of council that would like to attend the Economic Developers of Alberta Annual General Conference. It's virtual this year due to the pandemic situation and will take place on May 19th and 20th. We've been very supportive of this conference in the past, and I know that over the years, various members of council have attended in person at various times, and it's always, I think, been interesting and stimulating for those members who have attended. So it's just to throw the invitation open to council. Should a councillor wish to attend, the price is $300 per participant.
And then there is an experience box that's available optionally for an extra $200, but that's not mandatory. So I'll open it up for questions from yourself, Mr. Chairman, or members of council.
Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any elections there this year?
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Van der Veen, the EDA has already held its annual general meeting, and elections did take place, and I was reconfirmed as a secretary treasurer for the organization.
And was, whatchamacallit from Lethbridge here, was he re-elected too again?
Yes, Trevor Lewington, the head of Economic Development Lethbridge and Mayor of Sterling, he had been the vice president last year, so he automatically moved into the president's role, and he is currently the president of the organization. I was reconfirmed as secretary treasurer for the organization, and just as general interest, Ben Young, who is the Economic Development Officer for Tabor, was re-elected as member of council, and Peter Cosarella of South Grow was also elected to the board. So Southern Alberta is actually quite well represented, not only on the executive, but on the board in general.
So how many board members are there in total?
There are 11 board members in total.
Okay, so we've got a stack pretty good.
Yes, it is of course a Pan-Alberta organization, and we always try and make our decisions for the benefit of the province, but it is nice to see this is probably the highest concentration of Southern Alberta representation on the board that I can remember in my years.
Ann?
Just for clarification, Martin, for those watching, it's Town of Tabor versus MD.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Town of Tabor, that's me misspeaking, yes. Ben Young, Town of Tabor.
Any other questions or discussion? You go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. $300 seems kind of costly for an online conference. Is it any cheaper than it was than being in person the past years?
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, Mr. Chairman. I think that's a point well taken. It is slightly less expensive than being there in person. In the past, it was about $450 to $500 for in person. It has been a hard year for the organization, as it has been for many nonprofits. And so with the cost of the production and covering all the other expenses associated, in the end, we had to budget about $300. So to summarize, it is a little bit less expensive, but I understand that $300 does seem not inexpensive for a 2-day online conference.
Go ahead, Claus.
So how much money do you have in your kitty? Because you're the man.
Oh. What? Yeah. No, well, my budget was tightened a little bit this year, as we've all had to tighten our budgets. But I do have funds available. In the past, traditionally, the funds for councillors to attend haven't come out of my budget, but we're in interesting times, and I'm willing to be creative if that's necessary.
Any other questions? Is there anybody interested in attending? Ann?
Just a suggestion too, if you make a decision after today, you can just get a hold of Candace and let her know.
Well, if there's anybody who does want to go, we should make the motion so that people can attend then. Claus?
Then I'll make the motion that any Lethbridge County Councillor who wishes to attend the virtual Experience 2021 event on May 19 and 20 be authorized to do so.
Any other comments? Morris?
They probably like to have the numbers today, if want to attend.
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Zeenstra, is always nice to know as soon as possible, but also the EDA isn't fussy, so I think up to the 11th hour they will accept. If somebody decides in a week or in 10 days that they would like to attend, registration will still be taken.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? There's a motion on the floor for anyone from council who wishes to attend, can attend. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And let Martin know if you choose to go, or to participate, I guess, I should say. So, where is it? From the dairy barn, maybe.
Wherever you'd like.
Proclamation of International Economic Development Week, May the 9th to the 15th. Martin, this must be you too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this, I hope, will be an easy one because there's no money involved here. I think we always like to hear that. The week of May 9th to 15th is International Economic Development Week. It's a symbolic week that kind of celebrates and recognizes the importance of economic development and what it does for communities and municipalities across North America and around the world. Most U.S. states and many provinces, including the province of Alberta, will be making a proclamation for this week. And Economic Developers of Alberta, the EDA, has kind of issued a challenge that 25 municipalities in Alberta, at least 25 municipalities in Alberta, declare this week or proclaim this week as well. As of this morning, I was checking, and we are at 19 communities in Alberta that have already issued a proclamation, including some, just to mention a few names, Red Deer County, Strathcona County, Sundre, Vermilion, Airdrie, Brooks, are just some of them. And I would like to ask Lethbridge County Council to consider issuing a similar proclamation for the county, just a recognition of this week, and that Lethbridge County formally supports economic development and the efforts of economic development across the province and across the country to improve the life and the economic health of the communities.
Claus?
So with that information, how are you going to get that out there? Are you going to be advertising with that we're keeping that one in certain newspapers or anything like that?
Thank you, Councillor Zeenstra. Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Zeenstra.
Hey.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wonder. Vanderveen, I'm sorry. Brain freeze right there. That's the MD of Tabor, Town of Tabor thing right there again. Through to Councillor Vanderveen, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have spoken with our communications coordinator. We would be promoting this should council choose to issue the proclamation. And the Economic Developers of Alberta will be also promoting this as well. So it's an opportunity, and I always like this, for some essentially free publicity on our website, on our social media, and so forth, as well as at the EDA level. So.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for giving me the honor of being Mr. Zeenstra.
You two look alike.
My hair is nicer than yours.
So, who's going to make a motion? It doesn't cost anything. I think it's a good idea. Okay.
So I'll move that Lethbridge County proclaim May 9th to 15th, as it says here. You said 16, right? But as International Economic Development Week in conjunction with the AUMA, the RMA, and the EDA, and other participating municipalities.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Martin.
Mr. Chairman, I did take the liberty of printing out a proclamation. I can leave it with Candace or Ann to sign at your convenience, however we wish to do that.
Yep. Sounds good.
Alrighty. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
Thank
you,
you.
members of council.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move down to municipal services. Oh, wait a minute. Better not go that far. Bylaw number 21-012, electronic voting machine bylaw. Well, Larry, you're doing this.
Yes. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our executive summary on this short report is that the Local Authorities Election Act authorizes the Council to use automated voting system if approved by bylaw. Now, previous council direction policy in this regard, I don't believe historically Lethbridge County has ever used voting machines. The numbers of voters probably just didn't warrant the expense. So the county has historically relied on the manual counting of ballots for its municipal elections. The fall 2021 local election is a little bit different, and I'm sure you're all aware, but I'll just explain for anyone listening in on the meeting today. So the county will have up to 7 voting stations, 1 for each division within the county, for the October 18th, 2021 municipal election. Up to 4 of these stations will also have an election for school trustees for the Palliser Regional School Division. That is, of course, barring acclamations in their 4 respective divisions. Furthermore, for 2021, each of those 7 voting stations in Lethbridge County will provide voting opportunities on behalf of the provincial government for a Senate election and a referendum vote. And when I say that, and I'm sure the council as political representatives may even have further insight than we do at the administrative level, but apparently it hasn't been absolutely finalized and written in stone that that will occur, but every meeting we have, every indication we have received is that will be forthcoming. So it seems inevitable. However, as far as I know, as of this date, not absolutely confirmed, but we're kind of counting on the fact that that is going to occur. Municipal Affairs Alberta estimates that there are just over 7,700 eligible voters in Lethbridge County. Might seem a little bit high. I thought there were maybe more children or people under 18, but that's what they have officially on the Municipal Affairs Connect website that we have login privileges to. Some electors, so for this fall, some electors may have the opportunity to vote for 4 different purposes at one voting station. That being, of course, municipal, so for Lethbridge County, the school for the Palliser School Division, Senate election for the province, and referendum questions for the province. Excuse me. So county administration is of the mindset that it may be more efficient and less confusing for voters, for election workers, and for the post-election vote tabulation if automated voting machines were to be used. This would also create the possibility of needing, I think in this report we have only 1 or possibly 2 ballots rather than 4. We know that it would be a minimum of 2 because they won't put all 4 contests on one ballot, even though technically that could occur, but it would get too confusing as well in that regard. Automated voting tabulators are proven and reliable technology and are being used by many municipalities across the province already. One other key point here that we think would be very helpful, especially in a year of COVID or times of COVID, but I don't believe it's going to happen, is that the provincial government would open up the mail ballot voting opportunities for anyone who's eligible to vote otherwise. However, all indications to us given to this point are that they are not going to do that. If council were to pass a bylaw to allow mail ballot votes, it would only apply to people who are physically unable to attend a voting station on voting day, people who will be out of the area, far away, and I'm not sure how many people are going far away these days, not like normal anyways, or workers who might be working at a voting station in a division other than where they are entitled to vote. So we're not really convinced that that would be a whole lot of use or bring out a whole lot, higher numbers as far as participating in the local election. We see council as having basically two choices here, 2 avenues they could pursue. And one is to simply not use automated voting tabulators for the 2021 municipal election. The biggest advantage there, of course, is that funds would not have to be expended. And the cost will be up to $25,000, maybe just a little bit under that. The drawbacks to not using them is, as I've explained, it may be challenging to some voters if they have to come into a voting station, fill out 4 separate ballots, and then deposit them into up to 4 separate voting compartments. I think color coding would be critical here, red ballot for a red box, blue ballot for a blue box, etc., if we end up going that route. Another option then, of course, is to adopt an electronic voting machine bylaw, and we have a draft bylaw here for council's consideration if it chooses to go that direction, and that way voting tabulators could be used for the upcoming local election. The advantages of this that we see would be it may help reduce the complexity of making choices for voters on up to those 4 separate ballots or 4 separate votes. One other big advantage to this, which I think is kind of neat, is if a voter accidentally spoils their ballot. So for example, if they choose 2 councillors in a division for Lethbridge County, when they obviously can only choose 1, and they don't notice it, they'll go up to the voting tabulator, attempt to insert the ballot, and if we program it to recognize this, which we would, it'll kick back the ballot and essentially give that person who has accidentally spoiled their ballot the opportunity to go back to one of the election workers and say, oops, I made an error, could I please have another ballot? That ballot would then be taken and put aside and accounted for as a spoiled ballot, and that person would be given another ballot, and then hopefully the second time around they wouldn't make the same error. They'd be able to choose 1 council member, for example, deposit it into the tabulator, and away they go. Another advantage of using voting machines, obviously, is that results for accurately tabulated totals can be announced within a very short period of time after the polls close at 8 o'clock on general voting day. As well, voting machines remove any possibility of human error in the counting process. The drawback, or the challenge here, I guess, is the expense. Up to $25,000 is what these machines would cost. And I'll just touch a little bit more on the financial aspect of this to maybe help frame it up a little bit further. So the provincial government has promised to provide a minimum of $1 for every county citizen, which I believe our population officially at this point is $10,353, or 3 people, pardon me. So, yeah, if only. 10,000, just over 10,000. So that's not voters, but actual population. So to do that Senate election and referendum on their behalf, they're going to guarantee us that amount of money. So that would really offset the $25,000 cost of the voting tabulators. If there is a division, for example, in Lethbridge County, where there's only 1 candidate running for county council, and therefore they're acclaimed, and we don't have to hold an election, the province will then give us $2 per person in that division. So they'll double the cost. Another way to frame that is, let's say only 7 councillors run in Lethbridge County, 1 for each division. We don't need to hold an election, or we wouldn't otherwise need to. We're still obligated by the province to hold that Senate and referendum vote on their behalf, for which they would pay us $2 per Lethbridge County citizen. That's unlikely. Maybe in 1 or 2 or some of the divisions, only time will tell. As well, Lethbridge County has historically hired an external returning officer to conduct the election. So this year what we did, we attempted to do that again. We put it out on our social media, on our website, in the newspaper. We did it on Alberta Connection, which is the open public bidding site. And we got no interest. Not even 1 person said, hey, I might like to be the returning officer for Lethbridge County. So, as you all know, we've taken a different route this time around, and internal staff have been appointed to conduct the election and act as the returning and substitute returning officer for the upcoming election. That will save the county as well about an additional $5,000. Furthermore, the Palliser Regional School Division will pay half of the election costs for the school division wards where they require an election. If they're all acclaimed, we won't get any money from Palliser. If a vote is needed in each of the 4 divisions, then whatever half the costs are for that division, they will pay for us. That would further offset costs. It is expected that even if Lethbridge County was to use automated voting tabulators for the upcoming election, the county's election budget of $25,000, as well as these additional revenues that I've just described, will cover all election costs. We've recommended that we go this route, but we do again appreciate that it's a fair bit of money, and there are a lot of unknowns. The election could be really intense with contests to the max. Both of the provincial votes being required, school board required in all 4 divisions, and 7 elections in the 7 wards or divisions in Lethbridge County. That's a busiest case scenario, and you can kind of use your imagination on the other end or the other extreme where there'll be lots of acclamations for Lethbridge County and the school board, and perhaps in a worst case scenario the province pulls out. But once we commit to these machines, we've got them, and we'll be using them. So our reasons for our recommendation are to simplify the voting process for electors who may have as many as 4 separate voting matters to deal with, would allow the county to simply utilize appropriate technology for the election process, something that's, again, never been done as far as I know in Lethbridge County, and it may enhance public confidence in the election process. And I'll just point out, Mr. Chairman and Council, again, we do have a draft bylaw here today that you could adopt if you so chose or choose. At the same time, as election staff, we're ready to go either route, and there are merits to both ways, using the voting machines and doing it the more traditional manual counting. So I guess with that, I would maybe turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, and hope that there'll be some thoughts and discussion from council that might give us some direction here. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. So a couple of questions that come to mind. Is this sort of similar? I don't know if you've been to the FCM or not, but they use a kind of a electronic voting system there, and you just stick your paper in, like you said, and tabulates it. So would the provincial government ballot be the same? They would tabulate those results at the same time?
No. So how that would work is, again, there would be, let's say we have voting machines in the voting stations. There'll be one ballot box, essentially. And regardless of which ballots or how many ballots a person gets. But if they're taking and they choose to vote in the Senate election and referendum questions, they would submit that ballot into the machine, and it would tabulate it as it goes through and drops into a secure box below. And inside that machine, digitally, electronically, those votes will be tallied. And it's at the end of the night when they're all done that we would run a tape, in effect. And in fact, we have 8 days to provide the province with the results of their Senate election and referendum vote results. So we wouldn't even have to do it that night necessarily, although it can probably easily be done. We take a chip and we plug in the appropriate codes, and it'll spit out on a big long tape whatever those referendum and election, Senate election results are.
So then they would do 4, if you had 4 ballots, they would do all 4 separately.
All 3, because Palliser, well, actually, yes, it would do all 4. I was going to say, because we actually normally, if we did go with the manual route, we actually just give Palliser School Division the boxes with their ballots. They're responsible for the counting. However, if we use voting machines, we'll obviously have to tabulate that as well, quite simply by plugging in the appropriate codes and asking for the results, and then provide those tapes with those results to them.
And one other question, what about, would you be able to have an advance poll?
Absolutely. Yes, we're required to have an advance poll. So we'll definitely have an advance voting day. And again, maybe, as time goes on here, we can decide, but possibly even a second advance voting day might be appropriate. Maybe one during the week, maybe one on a Saturday, something like that. It would, if regardless of whether we use machines or not, my thought, at least, just thinking down the line here, is if we're still in a less than ideal COVID situation, that would help, disperse people and reduce crowds at any given time in any given location.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, what do you want to do? Bob?
I'll do the electronic voting machine bylaw number 21-012 first read.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the school trustee election, you've got up to four stations where they won't be in each of the 7 county divisions.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Steve Campbell. Well, it gets complicated, of course, because the school divisions geographically obviously don't align with the same divisions as Lethbridge County. You know, if they had 7 and the boundaries were identical, would definitely simplify things, but it doesn't. So the boundaries, we have some maps and so on that show where they are. So they do have 4 divisions, so we expect that we would have 4 locations. They would be the same locations, like we double up. They wouldn't be separate from the Lethbridge County voting station. They would just be kind of doubled up, if that answers.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize, there would be different boundaries. So that's the way it's always been, I guess, then some people would have to go to 2 different stations or 2 different places to, one vote for the county election and one to vote for the school trustee board then.
Excellent question, but no, not necessarily, because, Candace, we looked at the maps and it is confusing, but for example, there's one school division, I think it's Division 4, whereby in that geographic boundary, if you can picture it, there are 2 Lethbridge County divisions. So the people living on, for example, one side of the Lethbridge County division could vote for School Division 4. We'd have ballots there for them. And in the other side, in the other Lethbridge County division, they would vote for their councillor and that same school trustee. So we would think and hope that we'll be able to organize it so that we won't say, hi, thanks for coming today, here's 2 of your ballots. For your other 2, you have to drive 5 miles down the road to the next voting station or whatever. You know, I don't see that being necessary, and it would obviously be inconvenient and probably act as a deterrent, right, for people to participate in the election.
Ken?
So each division only has 1 polling station?
Yes, that's what we're looking at. I know historically 1 or 2 of the larger divisions have had more than that, but because of the cost of the voting machines, our feeling this time around is that we would have 1, as centralized as possible voting station for that division. And again, maybe add an extra advance voting day so that, we wouldn't disengage people by not hopefully giving them ample opportunity to cast a ballot in the election.
So before the elections, how many days are you going to have
Maybe an advance vote, is that
yeah,
what we think?
I'm thinking, yeah, and you had, so you're only having 1 of those or 2 of those?
Well, sure. Thanks for the question, Councillor Benson. So by legislation, the county is required to have at least 1 advance vote. So we'll definitely do that. And the only question is, and technically it's the returning officer's decision, but the only question then is, will we add a second vote, a second advance vote day? And, right now at this point, if I were speculating, I'd say it probably makes sense and might be a good idea, again, to allow more opportunities, pick a weekend day and a weekday for the advance votes. And then general voting day is Monday, October 18th. So there may be up to 3 different times at which a person could come in and cast a ballot.
So Larry, just to go back to your example of, you could potentially have a county division that has 2 school districts in it. See, as we don't have a voters list, how will you kind of figure out who should vote for which school board in the one polling station? Like, is that going to be confusing, or how do you going to see that turn out? I mean, it's going to be a problem if you only have one voting station, whether it's electronic or manual, but how do you kind of sort through that?
Right, and a good question again, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I would say, yeah, it's probably going to be challenging, not something we can't overcome, but we'll have to be careful. But just like with voting in the municipal aspect of the election, the same applies for the school district. We'll have maps of their divisions, and when a person comes in to vote, they have to produce the approved identification that proves their address, where they live. And then we'll look to a map, determine, okay, they're on this side of, the boundary, say if it's a range road or whatever, they're on this side, aha. So we know that they're in the right voting station. Here's your ballot for the school, here's your ballot for Lethbridge County, whereas, the other person on the opposite side of that school division still be voting for maybe the same Lethbridge County councillor, but a different school board trustee. And again, it's going to be just based on their geographic location and residence.
Okay.
Clear? Oh my gosh, sure, I have a tape here. Can I just play that tape again and listen? Yeah.
Just put a big marker on the map, and if you live over here, you vote for this people, and if you live over here, you vote for these people.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure where I live, though.
Honestly, though, to your question and point, Mr. Chairman, for sure, some good detailed maps will be really important here.
But that doesn't make any difference to whether it's electronic or not electronic. It's going to be an issue.
That's right, yeah. And I guess it always has, and
Yeah.
I didn't participate in the last election here, but I guess somehow they managed it and dealt with it and got through it, so we expect to do the same.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Oh, sorry, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these are rented, they're not purchased, as the tabulators?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, and why we're bringing this to you now is these companies are working all around Alberta and all around the country, for that matter, doing whatever, various elections, and they're all at different times of the year and different years and so on. But because we are now basically 5.5 months away from voting day, we're kind of at that make or break, or make a decision point where we need to either commit and advise the tabulator company that we're in, or politely decline and thank them for their time thus far, and carry on and plan for a manual ballot and ballot count.
Okay. Any other questions? So we do have a motion on the floor for first reading. If there are no other questions, I'll call it. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. You want to do second reading? Steve? Sorry, that's me buzzing. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. And we need a motion to go to third if you want to. Ken? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And third reading.
So moved.
Pause. Any questions? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Larry.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Council. And yeah, it'll be a new experience for Lethbridge County voters to use voting machines. And as well, just a reminder to the world that nominations for public office at municipal level are open now until noon on Monday, September 20th, right across the province. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
They've been open since January.
Okay, municipal services, Ag Services Board Policy number 614, soil erosion amendment.
Good afternoon, council. So I'm here to bring forward a policy revision that we had discussed at the ASB meeting on April 8th. Just as a quick review, the executive summary, soil erosion has been a concern over the winter of 2020 and 2021, and especially this spring. There's been a great deal of erosion evident in the southern region. You probably couldn't tell that as much right now because things are starting to turn a little bit greener and growing, but a month ago it was a little bit of a different situation. The ASB has legislative enforcement authority under the Soil Conservation Act, and because of the potential financial implications, the county has had a policy in place to address the issue of soil erosion since 1994 for incurred remediation costs for control or cleaning related to soil erosion. So in addition to reviewing and updating ASB policies, there were several redundancies and duplication found between ASB and Public Works policies. At the April 8th, 2020 ASB meeting, the following information was forwarded to council for policy review and approval related to the soil erosion. The policy forwarded, ASB policy 614, soil erosion, and policy 615, chargeback for blow dirt cleanup, have similar related content, and although the content is still valid, it would create clarity if both of these policies were combined. So on the previous council direction, as I said, this was forwarded from the ASB, which is a separate committee of council, to the regular scheduled council meeting because this is a policy or a policy matter. ASB policy 614, soil erosion, was last revised in 2015. Policy 615, chargeback for blow dirt cleanup, was last revised in 2006. So just going into the background information, it's the responsibility of ASB to administer the Provincial Soil Conservation Act, and properly doing so is beneficial to have up-to-date policies in place to aid staff when soil erosion becomes an issue. This newly combined policy encourages landowners to address soil erosion before it has adverse effects on farmland and country roadways and drainage ditches. Potential alternatives to this is not to combine the two policies. By allowing the ASB to make these changes, it will add clarity to our duties regarding soil erosion. In regards to the financial impact, at this time there will be no financial impacts to the ASB budget. If remediation under the Soil Conservation Act was required, the county would pay for the initial charge to the landowner, and then it would be charged back to them accordingly for cost recovery. To this date, we have not recently charged anyone for blow dirt cleanup. We have had great cooperation from landowners, which has been a testament to them as well as our ASB. So hopefully this stays as a cost neutral point for the county. So the reasons for the recommendation, this was to allow the ASB department to keep their policies up to date and in conjunction with the Provincial Soil Conservation Act. And the administration's recommendation to council is that council approves policy number 614, soil erosion as amended, which is attached, and the council rescinds policies 340 and 615. 340 was a public works policy, which pretty much identically said the exact same thing as policy 615, which is a chargeback for blow dirt cleanup. Any questions in regards to this?
No, don't think so, is there? So we should rescind them first, I guess? We can do both at the same time, can't we? Policies, both policies, 340 and 615?
I mean, you could, I think it's cleaner, Mr. Chairman, if you do two separate motions.
Well, we should rescind the ones before we approve the new one. But can we
Yes.
rescind the both at once?
Can you rescind both at once?
You can,
Yes.
but the trouble would arise if, for some reason, you know, in the future or something unlikely, but when we're brought back to life, it would not be a divisible motion. It would go-
So we could say rescind this one, then rescind that one, then approve that one. So 3 separate motions.
I believe that is the recommended and cleanest way. Let's put it that way.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. So who's making the first one to rescind 340?
Okay, I'll do it.
Claus?
Okay, then I'll do it this way. The council rescinds policy 340, and that council rescinds 615, charged back by blow-up dirt cleanup. So
Well,
that
we need-
that
we need-
makes it
we need to
two in one.
Yeah, we're supposed to do it in two, though.
You have to do one.
But I thought I did it right this way.
No, but you were close.
Okay, well.
No, but you were
as long as
close.
I know.
So you're doing 340.
Well, that makes me feel good.
It's kind of like horseshoes and hand grenades, you know, no. So we're voting to rescind 340. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Who wants to do 615? You want to do that one too? I'll call the question on 615. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And who wants to do approval for, somebody get the 614? Morris, did you want to do that? Or you just, any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, council.
Okay, let's move on to the picture butte and area request for tax waiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We received a letter from the Picture Butte and Area Growing Project, which had made a request to council to consider waiving the land taxes on 145 acres of farmland that is used for their community crop growing project. We don't, or haven't, levied the 2021 municipal taxes as of yet, but based on the 2020 taxes, the farmland portion would be about $1,097. To my knowledge, this is the first request we've received from the Picture Butte and Area Growing Project. However, in the past, council has donated $500 towards the Coaldale Lethbridge community growing project and has done so for a few years. As per the letter from the Picture Butte and Area Growing Project, this will be their 22nd annual fundraising crop. The crops through the Canadian Food Grains Bank help to address world hunger and aid in disaster relief and helping farms in third world countries to learn and adopt farming techniques. To date, the Picture Butte Growing Project has raised over $1 million over the years with the support of Southern Alberta communities. The recommendation of administration would be that County Council donate $500 per the Lethbridge County Donation Policy 161 to the Picture Butte and Area Growing Project with funding from the donation reserve. The reason for this recommendation is that it is based on a policy that is currently in place and also on past council direction and decisions with regards to the Coaldale Growing Project. Additionally, this recommendation would not impact the county's tax revenues, as council budgets annually an annual amount for donations and contributions. Some alternatives would be to accept the request and waive the taxes. A pro to this would be that it would eliminate a portion of the costs and taxes incurred by the Picture Butte and Area Growing Project. The con would be that it may set a precedent for future tax waiver requests of these type or by this program. Another option would be to provide the tax equivalent as a donation rather than as a tax waiver. So this would meet the request that's been asked, but it wouldn't be necessarily a waiver. The con to that is that it is a higher amount that would be donated and is outside of the policy. So, of course, the financial impact would be minimal if the donation reserve was used. However, if taxes were to be waived, it would be at minimum about $1,000. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for discussion.
So is it not correct that they get $4 for every dollar from the federal, for every dollar they get $4 in addition for the federal government?
Right.
So actually they're money ahead if we give them the $500.
That could very well be, I'm not sure, Mr.
So we'll
Chairman.
probably get a request though from Lethbridge, East or South Lethbridge, whatever they call themselves.
The Coaldale, yeah.
Ones as well, so. Yeah, I'm fine with the $500.
This is the first one that Pittsburgh finally applied for.
Since I've been here, yes, and I tried looking historically and couldn't find a resolution.
And for your information, the first loan project, where do you think it was? 31 years ago.
I couldn't guess by the smile underneath your mask.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do here? Klaus?
Well, I want to recommend that the county donates $500 to the Lethbridge County donates to the Pitch Butte area growing project with funding from the donation reserve.
Any other discussion or questions? Call for the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. The next one. G 3.2, 21 tax mill rate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have Les Whitfield, our assessor, join us for this as well. So as the assessment roll for 2021 tax year has been prepared, the 2021 municipal budget was presented and approved by council on December 17th, 2020. And as you know, a tax rate bylaw is required as it enables the property assessment and tax notices to be issued and annual taxes collected. The county's tax due date is July 31st. So we do have a draft bylaw as part of Section 353 of the Municipal Government Act. Council must pass a property tax bylaw annually in order to impose the tax, as I just mentioned. I'm going to get Les to go into the details of the assessment and the property tax rates for council's information. Do you want me to just
Good. Thanks, Jen. Good afternoon, council.
All right.
So this year, after the assessment rolls all been prepared and sent in, our figures don't come in too badly. There was a overall 41 million plus increase in the residential assessment, which breaks down as 17 plus million in growth and almost 24 million in inflation. The non-residential and M&E saw a decrease of $14,881,056. This is this is a combination of things, reduction in our linear property, oil field, industrial, and a big deduction from the provincial government grant program, which basically is the provincial share of the research station and jail. So that resulted in our attributable to the biggest decrease overall. But overall, I guess we want to go back to keeping our tax rates at that 2-to-1 ratio. So the tax rates that I've prepared are.
I need to make it bigger still. I don't know if there should be council a copy of this in your package, council, but we'll make it a little bit bigger here for you as well.
Are leaving the farmland tax rate relatively the same at 21.2853. The residential tax rate to 4.401 and the non-residential to 8.847. That's for the municipal portion.